And live. Hello, everybody. It's good to see you again. First live stream in several weeks. And I just want to do it at a different time. Normally I do it at night, but it's nice and bright out, and I'll be busy tonight anyway. So thought I'd do this. This is inspired by something I've been seeing multiple times the last couple weeks. And I'll post a link, although there actually could be a couple articles here on this topic. But there's got this push where the president and some people in society are really trying to get things back to normal, which is something that in general I agree with. I think that from everything we know about the coronavirus, that just getting things back to normal is probably not the worst thing to do. Most people are not at high risk. People who are at high risk should take measures, but people who are not shouldn't be forced to do more than they would want to do, or less than they would want to do, rather. Which isn't necessarily what it was looking like at the beginning. I can go back and look at my videos, and initially we were looking at the numbers we had were saying something like a 3 to 5% like fatality rate. Thankfully, it's not even anywhere close to that, not even on that order of magnitude. Which is not to diminish that it's serious, but it's not. So it's worse than the flu. It's 3 times, 4 times, maybe it's 5 times worse than the flu. That's pretty bad. But it's not going to end society, and it is possible to overreact, right? Just because something's bad, just because there's a risk of something happening, doesn't mean that anything that you do to ameliorate that risk is justified. So, in general, I agree that people should go back to work if they want, if they feel that they can, if the work's not inhibited. People should be able to go out. People should be able to meet. And if you have somebody who is at risk or feels that they are at risk, it should fall onto them to make that decision for themselves. Or even people who are clinically at risk could still make the decision, hey, I want to take the risk because it's their life ultimately. There is a very interesting ethical question about spreading diseases knowingly and whatnot, and I think I actually will dedicate some videos to that because it's actually a very interesting topic. Unfortunately, the level of debate in popular culture never really gets to the nuance necessary to have that discussion. But I do want to say that one of the things that I think should stay closed are schools. And it's quite interesting. So because Trump has been saying this, and I'm going to post a link to a New York Times article, but again, there could be several I could link here. They want them to be they want them to stay closed. The people on the left want the public schools and the colleges to stay closed, and it's looking like many of them will. Many colleges have already made the choice to stay closed. Some have made the choice to not be closed. Some of them are actually just straight up closing. There's a couple colleges that are just going to be out of business. If they were marginal, if they were already close, some of them are gone. But others, they won't be ended as institutions, but they won't have students in class. They'll be switching everything to online. Now, that is not ideal, right? I would prefer that they just completely stopped existing. I mean, look, there's a place for higher ed, there's a place for education, there's a place for institutional learning, if not for everybody, at least for some people. But it's way too many people are involved. So it would be good if fewer people did, and if there are fewer of these institutions. But the fact that they're not going to class, the fact that they're staying home and can do whatever fuck all they want during the day, that's great. That's a huge plus relative to what we had before. So it's interesting. I think the left is really shooting itself in the foot, and I think Trump is kind of being short-sighted, because the education, or the schools that teach all the teachers, right, they are explicitly ideological. Most of them have either an implicit bias, right, they're left-wing. They don't necessarily see themselves as evangelism to leftism or socialism or Marxism, but they are nonetheless, and they spread it. And then others are just explicitly doing it on purpose. They know that's what they're doing, that's what they're for. I have a friend, I'll just put that in quote marks, a gay guy who I know here, who is high up in the administration of Southern New Hampshire University, which actually prior to this had one of the largest online programs in the country. It has its own campus with a couple thousand students, but it's online. I think it had over 100,000, what do they call it, online learners. And he, without any shame, this wasn't like something that he admitted while drunk or as some kind of secret, but they explicitly give students classes where the point of the class is to guilt them into believing that they're racist, right? They give them implicit bias testing where it is a foregone conclusion that they are racist, that they're guilty of being racist, and that the only moral option for them is to become social justice warriors, right? If they can't just be neutral or not racist, they have to become social justice warriors to be moral. So this is kind of like implicit bias testing where the conclusion is you're racist no matter what you do. So they could have a question, you see a group of black people, do you go and talk to them? And if you say yes, well, that shows that you're fetishizing them, or that you're being patronizing to them, or that you're invading their space, or that you're gentrifying them, or whatever else. And if you say no, well, it's because you're racist and you're right. So there's no right answer. Every answer gets to the preordained conclusion. And that's just one example. It's not only to critical race theory that this is true. It's true of all the other panoply of socialist causes that they just assume are so self-evidently correct that they don't need to really defend them or argue them. The whole point is how to bring them about. So people who go to these schools and they become teachers, that's where they're coming from. And so the teachers are already, I mean, there's millions of teachers, so to say all of them are leftists is not correct. But they definitely skew that way heavily, and the institutions are run that way. So I think that it's silly for a Republican or Trump to want them to be open. The more closed they are, the better. The more free the kids are, quote unquote, the kids, the better. Right? The less time they're in school, the less time they're under the supervision of their left-wing know-nothing teachers, the better. Right? And if they have to still take online classes, that's shitty, but the degree that they can be manipulated that way is actually quite a bit less. The other thing is that I think, and this is starting to be borne out, I've read articles to this effect, that many people are just not enrolling in the primary schools because they're just saying, what's the point? The kids have to be home anyway, right? They're forced to be home. They can't go to class. Why would we have them be in an online curriculum at the school? Why not just have their own online curriculum? You know, this is a problem with the schools generally. This is a problem with institutional education, whether it's run by the state or not, to be perfectly honest. But the idea that there's a single pedagogy that everybody should follow is actually a really questionable idea. Everyone has not only different abilities, but also different goals. Right? Not everyone wants to be the same thing or get the same thing out of education. And so how do you make a one-size-fits-all or maybe like a 3 or 4 different sizes fit most approach? And you really can't. I think everyone's goals and abilities are going to dictate that they should have a tailored education to them. That's what's going to suit them best. And a generic education is going to suit everybody not at all, right? Everyone's going to have this loose-fitting, horrible. That's assuming that they implement it correctly or well, which is another. I'll just grant that they will at this point, but obviously they probably won't. But I think most people understand that. So you know, what maybe your kid's gifted or not gifted or whatever has a special interest in a certain topic. Maybe they're really into shop. Maybe they're really into music. Maybe they're into math or science or history or sports or whatever it is. And they have to go to school and then take this generic curriculum that forces them to do an equal amount of all that or not as much as they would like. And I think most people would recognize that, but say, hey, they're going to school. It's better than us trying to tailor something for them, you know, specifically for them. But now if they can't go to school and they're just going to be online anyway, well, if they're just going to be online anyway, you can, I mean, there are online curriculums already out there. There's homeschooling curriculums already out there. There's organizations that have already created stuff that specify particular types of interests that are already available. And even if they're not, there's so much available online anyway that you don't even need to have a specified homeschool curriculum to have a you know, rewarding homeschool education, or not even, I mean, homeschool I think is almost going too far, but self-taught learning. So a lot of people are deciding to do that. Now it's not going to be everybody, but a lot of people on the margins. All right, so I'm sure that the people, I think I covered it a little while ago, the anti-homeschool Harvard professor who's basically writing that homeschooling should basically never be allowed. Well, that shit's totally out the window now, right? I mean, the whole argument there is that you can't have the kids be home. I mean, their main argument, their strongest argument, wasn't academic, right? Because there is no academic argument to force people to go to the inferior option. as far as we know. And you can criticize the studies about that they're not perfect, but like all the studies that we have show that it's not inferior in any academic sense. In fact, it's superior in every academic sense. And that would make sense too, just thinking about it. But is that, well, if we allow children to be home, they could be abused and we won't know about it. And so the public schools, the main justification for the public schools essentially is a child abuse detection network, which if that's what they're for, I mean, they're super fucking expensive for that. I feel like that would be an easier thing to have done than, it's like the pretense of having all the classrooms and the gyms and the auditoriums and all the teachers and the guidance counselor, all that is really just the real reason that we have them there is just to make sure the kids aren't getting abused, right? Wow. If that was the goal, I mean, maybe we could find a better institution for that than the public schools. But now the kids can't go to school, right? They're not allowed to go to school. They're not going to be allowed to go to school. I mean, the professor who wrote that was at Harvard, and Harvard is not having classes. I mean, people will be able to stay in the dorms. It sounds like, I believe all the Ivy League now has decided this. I was just talking to a guy who works at Brown this weekend. Thanks to the gay network, I can be keyed into this stuff. And I think people will be allowed to live in the dorms, but they will have that as an option. They won't have to do that. And they will not be in class. There will be no classes, not in person. So, so much for defending kids from child abuse. I guess the presumption there also being that public school teachers can't engage in child abuse, which is ridiculous. But all the kids are going to be home, or some huge numbers of kids are going to be home, way, way more, millions more. And many of them are just going to say, fuck it, if we're going to be home anyway, why stick with the inferior curriculum? Why stick with the standard? Why do we got to do what Mr. Johnson in home ec thinks when I really want to learn about A, B, and C, or even better yet, I want to get a job or just read a book or whatever it is. And so this is going to be a huge deal. And I'm not the first to notice this. It's not the first time. It's something that came clear to me. But I would have thought that maybe the people on the left would be absolutely giddy at the prospect of, they'd be really eager to resume schools to get the kids back. They were so insistent on getting kids in the first place. That's why they made it compulsory. They're just absolutely fixated on the idea of grabbing the young and training them. And for whatever, they don't all necessarily have a single vision of what that is, but they all have a vision, and they all see that that needs to be forced through compulsory schooling. Right now, the fact that the public schools probably teach something that's not exactly their vision doesn't really bother people. There's this wonderful thing that government does. I made a video about this years ago called "Government: The Chalice of Desire," where people see that it is this powerful instrument and they imagine it enacting their will. So, in their mind, maybe they think that, the perfect pedagogy for a student is A, B, C, D, and then they advocate very strenuously for public schools. They'll defend public schools. They'll rebuke non-public schools, or rebuke private schools and homeschooling on the predicate that, well, they're not doing what I imagine public schools are doing or should do, without even connecting the dots that maybe public schools aren't doing those things, and they probably aren't. And not only if they, maybe even if they ostensibly, where they might not be doing a very good job of it, but people will still defend them. So there's this, it's been a linchpin, like a central pillar of the progressive movement in the United States, to have compulsory education, to mandate people go to schools, to the schools that are either run by the state directly or managed in such a way by the state that they achieve the same results, right? That they're private schools, but their curriculum must meet certain criteria and whatnot. And they seem to be en masse. I mean, I haven't seen any, I'm sure they're out there. I haven't seen any leftists who are saying, wow, as bad as coronavirus is, letting the kids be relatively free is even worse. And so I think that, and I'm not sure why that is. If I had to guess, I would say so much of progressive socialization is virtue signaling. Now, this is something that everybody does. We're social animals. It's part of being a social animal. The fact that we interact with others means that sometimes it's much easier to signal your virtue than to actually have virtue. If having virtue is expensive, and it has to be. If it's cheap, it's not a virtue, right? If it's quality that everybody can just have with no cost associated, then we wouldn't call that a virtue, right? It has for it to be a virtue, it has to be something that you're paying a cost to get. And if you can virtue signal without actually having the virtue, and that's much cheaper, right? It's easier to do that, then people have every incentive to do that. And, you know, and I include myself here, right? I'm not saying I'm above this, that I'm this pure virtuous person who's never, you know, that I never virtue signal. Of course I virtue signal. Everybody does it. I'm a little bit more, I'd like to think, maybe I'm wrong, that I'm more self-aware about it, and I try not to do it as much. But for liberals, it's like their number one goal is to be seen to be as woke as possible, or as liberal or progressive as possible. They want to be viewed that way. And I think that now it's been so tied up with the regulations on the lockdown, on the masking, on the closure, on all those things, that they're willing to sacrifice even their own program to a very large extent. Now, maybe they think that they can have their cake and eat it too, that through online programming, they can still implement a progressive ideology onto the students. I'm sure that that's not a completely erroneous thought. If the kids are still taking online classes, you know, they're still getting checked, they're still getting some coverage by the teacher, you know, they're not entirely wrong. But the amount of oversight, the amount of control that a teacher is going to have online with a student is many orders of magnitude less. I mean, I don't know how I would qualify or quantify it, but it's many orders of magnitude less. And on top of that, you are just going to have kids who just drop out, who are like, that's it, we're done, I'm not doing this anymore. What's the point? And you're going to have this with a lot of college students who are going to say, what the fuck am I doing? Why am I paying tuition when it's an online class? Why do I have to pay for all this when I can't even go to class? I can't even have the lab. Why? And not what? I'm not paying for room and board. I'm not getting the college experience. That's another thing. And you know, if I'll criticize my own video here, it's I'm talking about college and like high school here and middle school to a lesser extent, and they're not identical. There are some differences here, but they're pretty similar. And I think about, if you look at college, one of the big things people say you should go to college for is the experience, the college experience. You know, you go and it's like you're a kid, but your parents are around, right? So you're free from your parents, so you can drink as much as you want, you can fuck as much as you want, and you can cuss and swear and stay up late, and you know, whatever it is you want to do. And like, but you've still got a university, you've got an institution there. It's not the family, but you've got this institution that will cook your meals and clean the bathroom, and you probably don't have to work. You definitely don't have to work. You can just take out loans, and plenty of responsible kids do work, but they don't have to, obviously. And so it's kind of like this 4-year extension of childhood. But, you know, it's an experience. You're with a whole bunch of other people who are in the same position as you, enjoying their freedom. I would say that that's in scare quotes there, but, you know, that's a big reason people go. A big reason people are willing to go into debt. A big reason people want to go is for the experience. They want to get away from the family and go out. And, well, the COVID college experience is home in the basement on the internet, right? It's not the same. And you're paying all this money, but you're just not doing the experience. So it makes less sense. There's going to be people on the margins, not everyone again, but people on the margins, and actually quite a few people, thousands or millions of people even, who are going to say, fuck it. Why am I doing this? Why did I take out giant student loans for this? Why am I spending all my time doing this? And when the time comes, when they do reopen, if ever, I mean, the way that they talk about it, I don't know what the end game here is with this COVID stuff. COVID is never going to be eradicated, all right? COVID is always going to be a thing from now on. And do we just cancel society? Now, if we just keep the public schools closed, then I'll count it a good thing, and COVID will have been one of the most damaging to progressivism things ever. I mean, I don't want to simplify. I can't predict everything that's going to happen. So I could also imagine ways how COVID's going to help the progressives. So, you know, I guess I won't be too categorical in my predictions there. But what are we supposed to do? Are we like the schools just always going to stay closed? Are we going to keep all the teachers? I mean, another big reasons the schools exist is just a jobs program for middle class progressives, right? you consider yourself a bookish person, like you learned and you liked to study, but you weren't like obviously smart enough to become an author or become a public intellectual or become a really successful entrepreneur, but you know, did well on your tests, and it would sure be nice to just have a job that, I don't want to say it's easy, but you're guaranteed an income and you're guaranteed a vacation, health benefits, and all. I mean, so many people when I was in college, so many of the people were motivated by that explicitly, and then there would have been other people who were motivated by that but did not want to say that, right? Saying that you're motivated because it's a steady job. No one thought that it was a high-paying job. Debatable whether that's true or not, but like, nobody was doing it to quote get rich, but a lot of people did it because of the job security. That doesn't sound good, so a lot of people would not admit it, but it was true for a lot of people. Um, so I think a lot of those, I mean, the idea that a government institution should exist as a jobs program for the benefit of the people in the jobs program doesn't sound as philanthropic, right? That's not something that sounds as nice, but it's something that I think most people on the progressive side, and indeed many people in the mainstream, have just kind of come to accept that that's fine. Um, of course, the principles that are involved in that, the logic that is needed to rationalize that, would justify basically everyone having a job from the government, and why not? I mean, the level of economic understanding people have when they finish public schools wouldn't even invalidate that. Why don't we have everyone just have a government job? And unemployment, so easy. There we go. Who needs to work? We all just need to work for the government. So this is it's fascinating. I think that on the one level, with the New York Times article, which should be in the description at this point if you can't find it, there are many articles like this. At some point, this just becomes anti-Trump, right? Trump wants to reopen schools, so the left doesn't, and he's irresponsible for wanting it because he's irresponsible no matter what he does. Something I don't necessarily disagree with, but um, so at some level it's just anti-Trump. On another level, they're virtue signaling. This is how much they care about the pandemic, and they care so much about people that they wear a mask, and they will attack you if you don't wear a mask. And yeah, I'm just waiting for them to be told that Jews are bad for the Jews spread disease, or and then they'll start calling in their neighbors who hide Jews in their big bed. Overwrought perhaps, but similar in principle, right? That they're piling on anyone who kind of violates the social norms here. But yeah, I think the public schools, many of them are not going to open. The article that I link, they talk about the guidelines, and there's just no way around it. Public schools are an incubator and spreader of disease, for most types anyway. I mean, maybe not venereal disease so much, but for something like COVID or the flu, definitely. In fact, there's some people who believe, and I'm not saying this is true, and I don't think that it's been verified, that one of the reasons the flu goes down in the summer, and there's alternate explanations to this, so I'm not saying this is definitive, but one of the reasons is that the schools are closed, and so you don't have all the kids giving it to each other and then going home and giving it to their parents and grandparents and then killing them off, right? So whether that's true for the flu or not, that's what everyone's saying about COVID. In the article that I link, they're saying, the experts are saying that that's the most dangerous area in terms of spread are the schools. Well, if that's true with COVID, it's true with a whole host of other diseases. And so the question is, what are we getting out of the public schools that's that valuable? Right? I mean, if I'm going to be shamed for killing grandma, right, that I can't protest and I can't go for a walk or meet somebody or have a job or all the things that they think that should be canceled, that are important things, right? Well, what are we getting? And sure, education is important, but the public schools are an institution, a specific institution with a specific history and a specific track record. And what exactly are they giving that's so valuable that it's worth killing your grandparents? And I don't know how many people on the left would word it that way, but that is kind of the logic that they're going to have to use. And so I hope that they get what they want in this case and that the schools stay closed. And I hope that they start to collapse. I hope that they have to fire tons of employees. I hope that they have to close a lot of facilities. I hope that a lot of people, whether they be the actual children involved or their parents, just decide to fuck it and to do whatever else, unschool, homeschool, send them to a parochial school, do camps, whatever it is. Pretty much anything else that they do would be better, right? Just about any other use of their time would be better. You know, the great John Mangopoulos, the gadfly of Central Michigan, who got me really into politics and economics way back in the day when I was in college, has a little clip, a really interesting clip, and he is Mr. Straight-laced fundamentalist Christian, right? And he talked about smoking weed, and he's like, you know, if you smoke pot and you're a total pothead, but it keeps you out of public schools, then you're actually going to save brain cells. You know, he's even going from the argument that marijuana will hurt your brain and kill brain cells. It will kill fewer brain cells than kind of. It's even worse. I don't think public school kills your brain cells unless you play on a football team, but it wires them in a bad way, and not just from the curriculum being shitty, but just the rote deference to authority, the segregation into age cohorts, the very antisocial arrangement, right? It's very atypical, very artificial environment. That's all developmentally just horrendous for somebody, especially a teenager. It's not quite as harmful, I think, for younger people. Right? If you're 5 and you're just with 5-year-olds, it's probably not the end of the world. But if you're 13 and you only are with 13-year-olds, you're at a huge disadvantage. You could learn a lot from older people. You could learn a lot from younger people. And you also shouldn't be in a position where the only older people you know are your teachers, and they have essentially tyrannical authority over you, or some enormous amount of authority over you that you can only resist to your detriment, right? You can only argue against or complain about and then face their wrath and have them give you bad grades and just ruin your life to a large extent. So the fact that people aren't going to go, they won't have to be in the class, they'll be free to do what they want most of the day, even if they're taking online classes, and even more if they don't, is wonderful, and it's going to be really, really harmful for progressivism in the long run. They absolutely need this. The public schools and the progressive movement are just, they go hand in hand, they belong together, they need each other. Only problem with schools being closed permanently is my giant university gym will either close or be much more expensive. Well, I'm sorry, Stephen Koza, but you shouldn't be going to a subsidized gym anyway. You should be on the free market. So I hear you there. I hear you there, but let's be real. Most people who use a university gym don't shower there, so they're not even using it properly in most instances. So not that huge of a loss, to be honest. My gym is open, thankfully, so that's been nice. Yeah, it's been interesting. So for 3 months, 4 months, no gym, but Domino's was open, Dairy Queen was open. How many people are going to die of heart disease as a result of that? Unknown. Probably a few. But, you know, let's not get too nitty-gritty on the details on policy, right? We don't need to get into the details about policy. We just need to go with our feelings, which is, of course, why it's okay to protest and break quarantine if it's for BLM, but not if it's for anything else. So, yeah, I think obviously some schools are going to be open. Some colleges are already open or have decided to open. Many of them won't, though, and many, many people will just decide not to go. Colleges have been screwing people. It's been a racket for a long time, but they always had some things in their disposal that made people accept it. So things along the lines of this college experience, you can come and live in the dorms and go to the football games and enjoy that, enjoying the student life, right? Student life is a big component for a lot of people that they find alluring. You can have a student life, you can go and socialize and do the clubs and the intramurals and, like Steven's pointed out, the gyms, right? You know, it's like a amusement park for late teens, early 20s, sub-adults. I guess they should be full adults, really, to be honest. But now they can't do that, right? The school, like the campuses will either be closed, or if they're not completely closed, there won't be football games, there won't be intramural sports, The gyms won't be open. The social events, all that stuff. The parties, if they're happening on private property, maybe, but I think even the fraternities are going to have problems here. The fraternities start hosting parties, and I just don't see how the progressive administrations of these schools are going to tolerate that. Maybe it's not being within their power, but it's going to be heavily dissuaded. So, well, without that bait, I mean, that's the bait with the hook. You're taking the bait away, now there's just a hook. And well, some fish are still stupid and will bite it, but like a lot of people won't. Um, so, all right, let me get to some of your comments. So that's basically, guys, if you want to read that article, there's a whole bunch of articles along that line. This has now become like a partisan issue, and one where like the Democrats want the right thing for the wrong reasons. And I think that the Republicans should just give them a win here. I mean, come on, guys. Like, the public schools don't teach kids to be Republicans. Not that there aren't Republican teachers or whatever. They don't. But there's a couple problems. You know, here's an interesting thing. I've thought about this a lot, actually. The military is socialist too. The military is a big socialist fucking bureaucracy, right? That's what it is. And many people do. They join when they're 18, 19. They go in for 4 years, 5 years, 8 years. They come out and they're like, wow, that was some bullshit. All right. Veterans tend to hate the military in a lot of ways. Some of them don't. But, you know, they come away seeing it as a bureaucracy and seeing it as this really corrosive, anti-human thing. And a lot of them become libertarians, actually. It doesn't happen so much with high school, and I think a part of the reason is that it happens when people are younger, and so then you have all this nostalgia, right? You grew up, all the friends you grew up with, you all went to high school together, you all went to middle school together, and you had all these memories, and you formed your kind of, yes, you were born before that and whatever, but like you really kind of become a sentient being at some point during that period. And so you see yourself, your identity kind of begins then, and so you have this nostalgia for it that makes you very, very, very uncritical about the experience. And so you remember that one good teacher and you ignore that was one period out of 7 a day, right? And it really, really colors people's view on schooling in a way that makes it hard to, they don't come away saying, wow, what a stupid bureaucracy. And even if they have some vague sense that there might have been something that wasn't right, it's not that the whole thing is shitty. It's like, well, maybe the principal was crappy, or maybe I just didn't like my group of friends, or I had one teacher, or I had one bad experience, but that's not the whole thing. It's kind of like the good cop, bad cop. It's the problem is institutional. This is actually something that Gatto, rest in peace, wrote about when he retired from the New York City school system, just saying that something was wrong. He couldn't put his finger on it, and it took a lot of research and study on his part to, you know, really kind of say this is systemic. This is not just a bad teacher or a bad superintendent, one bad policy here and there. It's the way the whole thing is set up. So, what do you think about Kanye's West presidential run? Didn't he already drop out? And I don't know. I mean, apparently he's doing it with Trump though, so I don't know. If schools aren't going to be reopened, can the taxpayers get a refund for the service not being provided? The taxpayers and the students who pay tuition, both. No, you don't get refunds for tax services not rendered. A good thing to realize here, Will Adams, and I got this, I'll give credit where credit's due, and I don't listen to this very often, but School Sucks podcast with Brett Bennett talked about this. And a service isn't just somebody does something and they say it's for your benefit. A service is where two parties agree. They make an agreement and they say, you do this for me, and then I'll pay you or do something in return and barter for you. And then that's a service. Someone can't just come and do something and then say, okay, I did this for you and now I'm taking payment for it. Right? So this is why a squeegee man, for instance, is not giving you a service. You didn't ask the squeegee man to do your window. You may not have even wanted your squeegee man to do your window done, or maybe you did want your window done, but you didn't want it done by him or in that way or at that price. So he didn't do you a service, right? Same thing. I live in a place where it snows a lot. You know, it's never happened, but I could wake up one morning and find that my driveway's been shoveled and there's a guy standing there and he's like, okay, that's going to be $80. And I could say, I didn't ask you to do that, so get the fuck out of here. And the thing is, the government is extortion on the pretext of exchange. They say that they're giving you services, but you don't get to decide whether you want them or not. You don't get to negotiate on the price. They do what they're going to do, and then they give you a bill. It's not apportioned, by the way, so they don't say, oh, here's your tax bill because these are the things that you did. These are the things that you did not do. They just take what they're going to take. So, no, that's never going to. I mean, I know that it's a rhetorical question on your part, but no. In fact, even complaining about that and saying, hey, why are schools getting the same amount of money this year as they did last year when all the facilities are closed, right? Why do we have as many teachers? Why do we have as many? I mean, it's crazy because like half the employees are not even teachers, right? They're administrators of some level or another, hall monitors, whatever. Yeah, they're not going to slash their budgets. Like bureaucracies don't shrink like that. My gym reopened, but lost lots of strength in the gym, and I actually hurt my back while squatting because my muscles were even weaker than I thought. Well, Jolly Crocodile, last week was my first week back working out. I did squats on day one, on Monday, and I was wise enough not to go that high. The heaviest that I lifted was 60% of my normal working sets, not even my maximum, my normal working sets. And I was feeling it the rest of the week. It took at least 5 days before that was gone. But then I did them again this Monday, and I was fine. I did more weight and more reps, and I felt fine even the next day. So, guys, if you're going back to the gym and it's been a long time, definitely do those lifts, do the squats, do the deadlifts, the overhead pressing, the bench pressing, all that stuff. Get a spotter if you have to, and take them to the showers after. But do go slow. You've all lost strength probably if you haven't been doing weight training, unless you had your own stuff. And so go slow. Your body will readjust pretty quick. Alcohol and weed is essential. Health and fitness is a luxury good. Why not make mask laws permanent if it could save a few lives even after the pandemic? There will be immunocompromised people that can get the flu and other similar diseases. Yeah, so Jeff, this is actually a good question. I think, and it's a fair question. I think this deserves its own video, but what you point out there is absolutely true. It's not just coronavirus, right? We could have the same discussion 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. People were dying from diseases that are easily transmissible besides coronavirus: the flu, the cold, mono, measles, mumps, chickenpox, chlamydia, gonorrhea, HIV, right? Go on and on and on. Most diseases you can name are fatal to at least some people, albeit very rarely. I mean, I remember there was a young kindergartner in my school. He was a lot younger than me, who died of mono. He got mono really bad and he died, right? And he presumably caught it from somebody, probably at school, right? And so coronavirus is illustrating a principle that was already in effect. And the question is, everything that we do risk, and it's very simple if we just say, well, whatever reduces risk is therefore a good thing. Another thing you can point out is every year 30,000 people a year die in car accidents. Or alcohol is another good one. 30,000 people a year die just from alcohol poisoning, and some more. I'm not sure if we know exactly how many, but several thousand more die in alcohol-related accidents, auto accidents especially, but other accidents, people get shanked. I mean, I knew a guy who almost got murdered. He didn't die, but he got shanked horribly at a bar because the other guy was drunk, and it wasn't even a fight. The guy just didn't even know who he was. He thought he was somebody else, shanked him in the back, almost died. Okay, so we could just use that logic and say, well, maybe alcohol should be banned, right? Alcohol shouldn't be allowed. You don't need alcohol. And yes, people get a value out of it, but it also imposes all these tremendous costs. And that's not even getting into the health benefits or lack of benefits of alcohol. And same thing with cars. Well, people die in car accidents, so maybe we should ban cars. People die in boating accidents, so maybe we should ban boats. People die, right? So it's very easy. It can seem it's very easy to create a narrow rubric, right, and say, well, risk, the only thing that matters is lives and risk, and that's it. And anything that causes any risk at all should just be eliminated as much as possible or completely. And the thing is, by that logic, we should be banning everything, basically. Banning or restricting everything. And then all actions become something that you need a positive reason to do, right? There's no negative rights at all. Everything is a positive right where you can't do anything unless you can prove that you need to do it sufficiently badly that you can justify the risk of something else happening, not if not to yourself, then to others, right? I guess that would be, because the main counter is to say, well, it's my body, if I want to risk it, that's fine. And then you can say, well, yeah, but you're putting other people at risk too. And you know what? That's absolutely right. When I get in my car, I'm not the only one at risk. I could hit somebody, right? When I go to the gun range, I'm not the only one at risk. I could accidentally shoot somebody. It's very, very low. It can happen. You know, statistically, it will happen a certain number of times. Uh, I'm not particularly at risk of dying of coronavirus, but I could spread it to somebody who is, or they could spread it to somebody who is, but again, not just with the coronavirus, with everything else. So I think that we have to understand that we cannot arrest society completely just to mitigate some risk factors, right? Because we'll never get them to zero anyway, and you're talking about basically a massive police state. So if you're just talking masks, no, I don't think you can tell people that they have to wear masks. I don't think people are ethically responsible when they are unintentionally spreading things. They don't own the germs. The germs are their own organisms. They're doing their own thing. We're all victims of the germs. We're not victims of other people's choices in that sense, and to that extent. So it's an interesting point, and it's worthy of more debate than I'm going to give it here. But that's kind of my short answer for now. But that is actually a very good question, and one that people, I mean, could have been asked at any point prior to coronavirus. If having discussions like that is another side effect, I'll put that as the second best side effect to the schools being closed. Created on a whim. Hello. Turned out he decided not to drop out, and he's on the ballot in Oklahoma, and he's recently held a rally in South Carolina. Okay, well, that's very fascinating, and I'm sure the Democrats are really upset about it for obvious reasons. I didn't get a refund for at all college art classes despite it being canceled about 40% through the semester. I lost hundreds of dollars of that BS. Yeah, I had friends who they didn't get their room and board. I mean, they got kicked out halfway through the semester. They got none of their room and board back. But you may have become unrelatable to me when you did gym showers and became a nudist. Do I look like a nudist? I'm not a nudist. Contextual only. Do you follow the floor arrows in the grocery store? I do not. I didn't even notice them for quite a while. I definitely don't follow them, though. And I don't wear a mask. If the point of YouTube and Reddit was to connect with someone like you, or maybe someone even more complex, it failed up to now. I'm not sure what that means. I mean, did you just come on to complain that I'm not meeting your expectations? Come on. If you have a question, you can ask, though. I started my squats at like 80%. No, don't. It's been too long for that. But I actually hurt my back when I followed the weight lowered the weight even more. My back is almost totally healed now. Yeah, but you started too heavy. You started too heavy. Take it slow, people. What do you think about people comparing not wearing a mask to drunk driving? Well, it's not a totally wrong comparison, right? There's a risk either way. You're always taking a risk. Everything you do, there's risk, right? So that's not wrong to say that there's some comparison, because there is. They're saying responsible, not responsible. Driving drunk is, I mean, drunk driving is irresponsible. Not wearing a mask is not necessarily irresponsible. Also, I mean, drunk driving can be lethal, you know. So I guess spreading a disease can also be, but it's less likely to be. I don't know. The other thing here, I mean, my libertarian sense, you know, the roads should be private, and you would be breaking a private covenant or a private contract to do that. Like, yeah, you at a certain point, people need to take their own lives in their hands and reduce their own risks. If you're afraid you might get a disease at the store, you need to adjust your own actions. Yeah, that's a good point. And there's a general that's a really good point, actually, Jolly Crocodile. Um, you we are social animals and we interact with each other, and that's important, and charity is important, and taking other people's rights into consideration is important, and their well-being. These are all important things, but you need to focus on yourself the most. You need to focus on what's best for you, what you need to do, what you can do, and you don't want to put yourself in the position of society needs to be molded to best give me what I want or what I think it should produce. You can persuade people for sure, but persuade yourself and don't look at it like everyone. There's also the other tendency there is to just go into like everyone is responsible for everyone else's actions, and I think that that's wrong. That leads us very quickly into we shouldn't do anything unless we have the positive say-so of everybody else somehow. I think that's incorrect. I mean that the utilitarian place that leads is really bad, but more than that, I don't think it's true. So, um, at his campaign rally in South Carolina, Kanye made some controversial statements about Harriet Tubman, claiming that she never freed any slaves. That's news to me. Maybe you could say they ran away and she just helped them run away, but I don't know more than that. Uh, Ripito recommended people go through their linear progressions with low weights. I actually saw that. I saw that video title and I didn't watch it. But that makes sense to me. Look, the other thing to remember, people, is that muscle memory is real, right? So if you were doing a certain amount of weight, you'll get back there very quickly. It won't be like starting from scratch. You just don't want to rush it. Um, the success of South Korea and many other Asian countries doesn't come from their government response per se, but rather it's cultural in that there is a stigma attached to being known as someone or a family that is caught with coronavirus. Uh, Not prepared to say whether that's true or not, but I think it is fair to say though that if you have a cultural trope that's going to be much more that's self-reinforcing or self-enforcing, that's going to get more done than government dictator policy, right? So whether that's socially isolating or not getting sick or having a job or being educated or whatever it is, if you have a cultural, social trait that people follow, that people believe in, that's going to do more than a government program, whether we're talking about coronavirus or anything else. But again, I'm not going to say I don't know the specifics of South Korea, whether that's true or not. Unrelated question, but do you plan on making any more content in foreskin restoration? Love your videos. Yeah, I absolutely do. I want to make more foreskin restoration videos, but I'm kind of waiting until I'm done because then I'll have more to say. I've already made videos on techniques, the philosophy, how long it takes, that sort of thing. So those are the big questions that people were mostly asking. There isn't a lot to add to those. I could make a video now because it's becoming more and more like it's more common that people think that I'm uncircumcised, including guys who are themselves uncircumcised. I had this just happen a week ago where I was with a guy and we were naked and he was like he's just started just going off on cut guys, like cut guys, they don't have any sensitivity, it's so annoying, they can't feel anything, it's so boring, it doesn't work, and blah blah blah. And I was like, I'm cut, right? And he was like, what? And he's looking and he's like, no, you're uncut. And I was like, no, look, there's the scar. And he's like, oh. So, that's new, and this is a guy who's himself, completely uncircumcised. So, that's definitely new. But it's been happening for a year or two now, but it's getting more common. But I don't have a lot to add yet. When I have full flaccid coverage and if I let that sink in for a while, I'm getting there. It's just a very slow process, as anyone can tell you. Um, but, will the invisible hand of the free market fix my spine, or has libertarianism failed me? Maybe both. Uh, how do you think employers might respond to less college graduates in the market? Um, they might value college degrees more, but I mean, the numbers, if the number of college graduates goes down, 5% or 10%, that's just going to rewind the clock to 10 or 15 years ago or whatever. So it would have to, the numbers are probably not that radical at this point for there to be a huge change. I think it's already gotten to the point where they really, it's heavily discounted, right? They're just not worth what they were. We were all, I mean, if you're my age or older, we were brought up, just think that having a college degree really distinguished you, and it was like something like a golden ticket, it just guaranteed you a good job. And that is basically not really true anymore. It depends what degree you get and where you go, but guys, I mean, I have a good friend who I've known for years. I just went to the nude beach with him, and he just graduated from Harvard with a computer science degree, right? He's a computer scientist from Harvard, and he can't get a job. So or he hasn't yet, and he's trying, he's been doing full-time for months trying to get a job, and he hasn't. So from Harvard, right? And he's got a good GPA and smart guy and all that. Looks good, super fit. Can deadlift 400 pounds for reps. Yeah, it's gonna take a lot for that to change. I mean, the number of people would have to go down like 50% for it to really make a big difference. I'm seeing way more people mad about their circumcision on 4chan than ever before. Yeah, so the thing is, intactivism has really, the guy who made American circumcision has noticed this himself and is also probably actually more responsible for this than anybody else, a single person anyway, although you have organizations like the Bloodstained Men who I think are also doing a really good job. But it really went from something that very few people had heard about, that very few people thought about, to something that a lot of people have thought about, and most people have heard about. Now, the reactions to that aren't always positive. You do have a lot of backlash. There's a lot of people who become defensive circumfetishists or people who advocate it. But you also get a lot of people who go, that makes sense. Maybe they never thought about it before, but it makes sense to them. And some subset of those people, the more they think about it, can end up becoming very upset about that. And I do feel like we've just kind of turned a corner here. So when I was making the first video I ever made on that topic was in 2013, and I think that was just out of the blue, and I think a lot of people at that time just kind of had that was a weird reaction to it. Now people are much more receptive, and when I've talked to people in person, they're much more receptive. My hair is just crazy. I'm sorry, guys. I have not had a haircut since March. Wow, that's just nuts. Yeah, more and more people are upset, and it's really turning a corner, I think. And the other thing I would point out is, when these arguments, well, they'll grow up. The circumcision rates have dropped enough that your kid is not going to be the only uncut guy. First of all, they don't take showers anymore, and they may not even have public school. So this may be totally moot in 15 years. But if they did, he was not going to be the only uncut guy. The other thing is, he's not going to get through his life without learning about intactivism. So the odds, if you circumcise your son today, the odds that he's going to grow up and never encounter this are zero. He's going to, which may not have been true if we were talking about somebody born in 1960. They're going to get through most of their life, and it's never going to be a real issue. Maybe they hear about it when they're in their 60s or 70s, but so it's a stronger incentive to not do it for all of you breeders out there. Boo, boo, boo. At a rally, West stated abortion should be legal because the law is not by God anyway. Stated that abortion should be legal or illegal? I thought he was going to pay $1 million for people to have babies. Keep on tugging. I'm a secular Jew, and while visiting my parents, I convinced them that circumcision is wrong. They took it surprisingly well. Well, I think a secular Jew, I mean, really, the strongest argument really is the religious one, right? Doesn't matter because it doesn't matter about sensitivity. It doesn't matter if the disease stuff. None of that matters. God said to, and if you believe that's real, then I mean, if you really think it, you know, the God of Abraham is real, and you have a covenant with that God, then yeah, it doesn't really matter whether circumcision is harmful or not. You have to do it. But if you're secular, then that it just becomes this weird tradition, and people take it seriously. And there's evidence that even among secular Jews, circumcision is the most valued trait. But yeah, you're going to have an easier argument if they're secular than if they're Hasids. Um, uh, do you think the anti-white rhetoric in the media is real, and if so, does it concern you? Uh, some of it is real, and some of it is critical theory, right? Some of it is progressive theory. So these are people who they aren't actually racist against white people, and they don't actually really give a shit about black people. They have a political agenda, and using racism as a cudgel is what they view to be the best technique because it's so effective at just ending debate, right? So you can come and try and make an argument for reparations or whatever, or wealth redistribution. It's just a very hard argument to make. But then if you just come and say any discussion is racist, well then that's more effective as a debate tactic, not in terms of making a good argument. And if you look at critical theory, and guys, I've decided I'm going to read some books on critical race theory and white fragility. But if you listen to what's her name, the Primrose woman in the UK, and fuck the other guy, he's been on Rogan a couple of times, but they're pretty good on it. And basically the idea is um, you have this radical deconstruction, right? And this was some of the modernists were just radical deconstructionists, and and so you could have this whole, we could have a tax debate, and they could just say, look, are we even real? Or maybe we're just brains in a vat. Your words don't mean anything because words only refer to other words, and so there's an infinite redux, which I think is wrong, by the way. But you could break down, so someone could start talking about free markets and capitalism or republics or rights or the Bill of Rights or whatever it is, and a postmodernist could just start tearing it apart and just saying, oh, there's nothing there, we don't know anything, blah, blah, blah. But you could do that to anything. You could do that to Marxism. You could do that to black nationalism. You could do that to BLM. You could do that to anything. Right? You could do it to Zionism. But the way they use it in critical theory is to just selectively do that. So they'll do that to capitalism. They'll do that to the United States or the patriarchy or church, the churches or the family. But they won't do it to unions, socialists, Marxists, the federal government, Zionism. Right? So they have this total hypocrisy where they will try and just denigrate and break down the things they don't like while totally giving a pass to the things that they do like, and you just see it all the time. It's similar with the slavery debate, like I pointed out in my previous video, where slavery is this original sin that taints everything except for the socialist things that they like about society, right? So it doesn't taint Marx, it doesn't taint the federal government for some reason, it doesn't taint the Democratic Party, which is just fucking amazing, but it does taint everything else. So in that sense, I don't think it's genuine. It's just a debate tactic. That said, I do think there are people who are genuinely anti-white. Some of them are black, and some of them are actually self-hating whites. But I think that's a minority. Could be wrong, though. You look like Alexander the Great. Well, I'm older than he ever was, so no. He died at 32 or 33, so we do actually have some really good. Apparently, we have a good idea what he looked like, though. There's statues and there's some mosaic work that's pretty good to him. Can I come cut your hair for? No, Glenn. No. Unrelated topic, but gold, silver, ammo prices keep going up. I may buy some. Yeah, gold, beat 20 bucks for the first time in quite a while. Ammo's just always been going up, guys. Ammo just does not go down. I don't know why that is. Some of that is just inflation, I'm sure. But yeah, if you do not own a gun and you live in the United States, you are wrong. Okay, get a gun, get ammo. Second thought, silver is probably a better choice. Silver seems to fluctuate more than gold. But yeah, I've still got mine. So honestly, I think there's a lot of black fetishes out there who just look at how subservient whites are at active BLM rallies, and how White Fragility book is also really popular now. Yeah, because they're told to read it. I mean, she was. I'm sure you've heard the passage where she's like, she was worried that she might have to go and talk to black people once, and it's like, wow, there's some real strong projection there. I have a friend who read it. I mean, I have a friend from Cambridge who read it, and he's like, it's so interesting. I'm like, you're full of shit. I probably will read it though, just to. I'm gonna diss it here, but it would be better if I read it and then dissed it. Oh my goodness. Most of the anti-white rhetoric I'm hearing comes from guilty white liberals with their holier-than-thou attitude. Yeah, that's where most of it comes from, for sure. Look, Broken Microphone, you know that I read The Culture of Critique, so I know where a lot of it comes from, absolutely. But it should be pointed out that not every fucking progressive is Jewish, and not every Jew is a progressive. But yes, that's absolutely true. And if you look at like the Frankfurt School, yeah, they were all Jews, and I mean, one way to sum it up is the idea that fascism is the worst thing that ever happened, and fascism is so bad that anything that could even lead to fascism is fascism. So something that's not necessarily fascism, if it can become fascism, then it should be destroyed. So this is where they start breaking down the family, the church, any form of nationalism, except for Zionism, right? They always have a blind spot. Zionism's fine. Immigration restrictions are fine as long as it's for Jews or against, to keep Israel Jewish or whatever. Or to restrict groups that are anti-Jewish. So now all of a sudden they want open borders, but if there are groups that are obviously and evidently and explicitly anti-Jewish, then maybe we can restrict those groups. So no doubt about it that that's a big issue, that's a big part of it, and a lot of the postmodern people and the Frankfurt School people are Jewish, and I mean Freud and all of them, they are very cliquish that way, some of them consciously, some of them unconsciously, but it's not, I mean, there's lots of people who are into that who are not Jewish at all. There's lots of Jews who are not into that, so you got to be careful there. I don't know much more I can say about it. I mean, I'm not going to please everybody. I know people are going to say, well, I'm a cuck for fucking Jews now, but because I didn't go far enough there. But I mean, what else do you want me to say? Fucking end Israel. I mean, I'm an anti-Zionist. Israel should end. AIPAC should end. There should be no Israeli influence in the United States. American Jews are often weird because they fetishize Israel and Jewishness, and they're not all like that, but a lot of them are, and it's very destructive to our politics and to our society, but they're not the only destructive things to our politics and our society either. Yeah, something that's always confused me. What's the gun production bottleneck? Can't get access to capital workers. I don't know, Stephen Koza. There is, on the one hand, there's just been this constant background feeling that gun confiscation is always on the horizon. Because it always kind of is, because there's always some Democrats who are powerful who talk about it. Now, they haven't been great at getting it passed at the federal level, although they've had more success in some states. And so there's this sense that like this stuff could be banned, which means the price could skyrocket. So there's just people willing to buy it. And so there's a lot of people who buy. And also it gets consumed, so it's not quite the same with guns where, you buy a gun once, you've got a gun. But you can't just buy ammo once. You have to buy more ammo and 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 more and more and more and more and more. You can never buy enough, right? You can have enough guns, I guess. I mean, you can have quite a few and still buy more, but like you can't really have too much ammo. The other thing is now there is starting to be some back while people are getting like lawsuits are being committed. There are some institutions that are getting tricky on lending and stuff. So these are more, as far as I know, this is happening more at the point of sale, like gun dealerships, and not necessarily ammo makers. The ammo manufacturers have an outlet they're going to sell to the government no matter what. So like some of them obviously would go out of business without private sales, and some of them that's all or most of their business. But the industry as a whole doesn't depend entirely on the private market, which is sad, but it's true. But that could be part of it, but I really don't. I think a big part is just people are like, these could be banned, I want to stock up. And I mean, now with COVID, whenever there's a survivalist type situation, obviously there's more, but that doesn't explain why it's always going up, but that's the case. I mean, what is it? It's been about 15 years now that I've been a gun owner and buying guns, and it's just never come down. It's just gone up and up and up. The ammo and the prices. A handgun, a new handgun, get a Beretta or a Glock, they've doubled in price in that time. And same with everything else. So, I mean, 22s are still cheap, but like they're way more expensive than they were. 9mm, like it's nuts, dude. You're paying $1 a slug for shotgun shells, for Christ's sake. If America is to be blessed by Yahweh, circumcision is a matter of course for all males. Well, we are not going to be blessed by Yahweh anymore because it's not a matter of course for all males at this point. It hasn't been for about a decade now. The super religious Jews are actually anti-Israeli, apparently. Well, they're split on that. They're split on that because, I mean, Zionism, historical Zionism, was a secular movement. Theodor Herzl was not Hasidic. He talked about converting to Catholicism. He didn't circumcise his son, right? They wanted a Jewish nationalism, and they didn't necessarily even want it in Israel. They talked about other places, Uganda, Madagascar, South America. There were some religious Jews who were into it, but they had more heretical religious beliefs, like millennialist beliefs. I mean, Judaism has had a long history of had messiahs, right? I mean, Jesus kind of was the one who really hit home and made a go of it, I guess you could say, or not say, depending on how you view what happened to him. But his religion made it, right? But there have been many, many rabbis over the years who became, revered figures into relatively smaller groups of religious communities of Jews. But you did have a religious community of Jews in Jerusalem from the beginning, pre-Zionism, small, but there. And you had some of these religious Jews getting into it. And I think some of the secular Jews, they didn't want to admit it. So these are the labor Jews, the Haganah, the David Ben Gurions of the world. They were secular. They probably were atheists, but they still, I mean, most of them, almost all of them, were communists or socialists. But they had internalized their culture and their religion in a lot of ways, even when they were atheists. This is something that still happens with secular Jews today. And so I think a lot of them did have like an emotional attachment to Palestine. And even though, what the fuck, that if you're secular, who cares? You don't believe in Abraham, that any of that happened, and it's just like a bygone history, but they still believed it. But yeah, there was a strong religious objection, right? That, well, God will bring about Israel, not the fucking IDF, or not Haganah, not the Ergun. They're not going to bring about Israel. They're not going to bring about the first coming, right? That's going to be God. God's going to do that. And that's blasphemy. That's heresy. for you to say that you're going to do it in a secular way. It's really kind of right, and this really changed after World War II, right? Because of the Holocaust, the attitude against Zionism was just, it was hamstrung in a really big way. It wasn't really a religious argument. There wasn't a religious awakening among Orthodox Jews. It's just the argument kind of went, and you know, I'm sure many of the Orthodox Jews fucking died and so couldn't object to it anymore. And it was traumatic. I mean, a lot of even secular Jews felt guilty. Like, what the fuck did we do? We let this happen. We didn't do shit. And if there are people like fucking Menachem Begum, he's doubly responsible here because he actually fought against the British during World War II. So that's, I mean, if the enemy enemy, he's helping the Nazis, and they did. Some of them actually did work with people like Heinrich Himmler to get Jews out of Germany to Palestine. Right before the Germans were killing them, they were just trying to get rid of them. And you have these Zionists saying, "Hey, give them to us. We'll take them off your hands. So what if we're working with Heinrich Himmler? Who gives a shit, right?" But yeah, that's basically it. But yeah, they still have a big contingent of Orthodox Jews who are strongly anti-Israel. And if anyone's curious, go look up Torah Jews Against Zionism. They've got a website. They've got a meter, like a reader, threats. I think it's threats to Judaism from Zionism, and they have, like, you know, and like the lowest level is like Zionism is in retreat, but we must be vigilant, you know, and like the highest is like Zionism is poised to end, you know, religious Judaism. If you read the book The Prime Minister, is about the section on Menachem Begum has a funny episode where he was visiting New York, and I forget his name, but one of the really strong anti-Zionist rabbis held a giant rally outside with a megaphone, just calling him a war criminal and a terrorist, which he was both of those things. And it was fascinating because the author's like, it's wonderful that Jews can be free to do this. Like, yeah, in America they can do that. America's a wonderful place for Jews. We welcome them all. So, including the ones from Israel who get fed up with fucking living there because it's a police state. Even worse than the United States. Right? I won't give the U.S. free reign here. So, like, it wasn't a theological debate, though. It was just like a political, because of the Holocaust, because a lot of the religious Jews dying, and then the other ones not wanting to raise a finger, or, you know, so it's still out there. You can still find that view. So yeah, you've got these Torah Jews who are against Zionism, and then you got some very left-wing Jews like the Max Blumenthals, Glenn Greenwalds of the world. They're out there. Norman Finkelstein, they're out there. They do great work on Zionism, if not on other things. And then you even got like the Sheldon Richmonds, you know, the libertarian Jews of the world. So, yep, that shit though. Have you ever read the Bible in its entirety? No. Zion is not Israel, rather it's Cambodia. What the hell? Okay. That's news to me. What does that have to do with schools closing? Nothing. And we have problems with you know, the Hasidic Jews having like funerals in New York City, and they were getting broken up, and then like, oh, it's the pogroms all over again. But I mean, they should be able to have a funeral if they want to have a funeral. All right, so that was pretty much it, guys. If Biden wins, do you think we'll get a lot of hilarious Biden memes? Well, we're already getting a lot of them, so yes. If he wins, we'll definitely get more. They'll be more hilarious. There'll be more because he'll have to talk more, right? He's kind of hiding because he's Biden. That'll rhyme. um, he he will have to have more of a public presence, and that will just give more ammunition for the memedom. How are you going to social distance 60 students on a school bus, or in a class, or in the hallways, at their locker rooms? How are you going to do any of that stuff? Some of the guidelines that so part of the article, if you read it, it's basically saying that the guidelines that are suggested are prohibitive. It would basically be impossible for any of the schools to meet them, and Trump is calling for them to have less regulation, right? Lower standards, and that's more doable. But then it just kind of defeats the whole purpose. I find that it's this stuff. One of the things we know about COVID is that it's fairly contagious. So. Fortunately, it's not serious for the vast majority of people, which is wonderful. It's funny. I've seen people who are upset that it's asymptomatic in most people. I'm like, yeah, it's asymptomatic in most people. That's better than if it was like the symptoms were death in most people. Um, if it was more lethal, it wouldn't spread as much. That isn't necessarily a good thing. I mean, we can have a debate there, I guess, but it's very contagious, and having public schools is not good for contagious diseases. Uh, the Do you think that Antifa and BLM are like the youth movements in Maoist China? No, and I'll say this for the simple reason that I don't think that they have a central godlike leader, right? So Mao was a dictator with basically absolute power, and that was an arm of his police state control. And whatever you want to say about BLM and uh, Antifa, they aren't that at this point. Maybe they would like to be. They don't have a leader. They're not arms of the state. Now, do they share a lot of views? I think that they do. I mean, they're both obviously Marxists. They will admit that to one flavor or another. Um, so they probably have a large intellectual overlap, but they're not similar organization-wise, and they're certainly not as powerful. Uh, you didn't get that smart in school, you were already smart. Yeah, well, that's the thing, is school doesn't make you smarter, school makes you dumber. Right? It wastes your time, makes you learn stuff you don't care about, that you're not going to remember, that you don't need to know. Even if you did remember it all, it would be questionable that the stuff is of any real value to you. Not just in terms of a job or a market like that, but just general learning, right? They're not teaching you things that are going to give you character or insight, really. I mean, in 12 years, I'm sure some of the stuff, maybe, but like, not really. And like, I always found it really frustrating because there were topics that I did care about that I thought were interesting. And it would be frustrating because then the 45 minutes or 50 minutes that I had, 53, I think my classes were in high school, they came out to be like 53-minute classes or something like that. Um, they weren't, that wasn't enough. That was never enough for the classes that I cared about, which, history, band, that pretty much covers it in my case. I'd have to run off and do shop. And I'm not even saying shop could be a useful thing. There are people who loved shop and who learned amazing things there and did amazing work and got real life skills out of it. So those people should have been able to be in shop for 5 or 6 hours a day if they wanted, and I should have been able to be in band for 5 or 6 hours a day if I wanted. But we weren't, because then we had to go to health class and gym class and all these other things that we didn't care about. And I'm not even making a value judgment about those classes per se, because there are people who would have greatly valued and benefited from those classes, but they also could only do them for 54 minutes a day. It was just stupid. And then you got to do what the teacher says, which who the fuck knows if they know what they're doing, and the curriculum and all that stuff. So no, it doesn't make you smarter. It doesn't make you smarter. It validates certain types of behavior. It validates deference to authority. It validates people who listen and can sit and be patient and all that. It doesn't validate entrepreneurship. It doesn't validate a smartass. It doesn't validate people. It doesn't just validate intelligence. In fact, it mostly validates conformity. That's what you get a gold star for. So, and those aren't necessarily bad traits either, but shouldn't lead you to the top of society. It's Trump versus some empty vessel that people are projecting their own ideas onto. I haven't seen a single international headline about Biden except for Trump calling him an invalid. Well, and then like I mean, this was what did Obama run on? Hope and change. Well, what does that even mean? It means whatever you want it to mean. So if you believed that he was going to say end the war in Iraq and bring about universal health care, then you just projected that onto him. And he was very, I mean, I think that was deliberate and highly politically savvy of him to do. You could just project whatever it was you wanted and then get really invested in it because you think he's going to do whatever that is, right? And no two liberals even agreed on what that was going to be. So uh, that's just what government does, right? And because people are rationally ignorant about what it actually does, how it actually functions, they're able to do that. You're not rationally ignorant about what your boss does or what your job is doing because you're there every day and you get to see. So you can't just pretend and be like, well, I really support my boss because I know he's the greatest person ever. You know that that's not true, presuming that's not true. But like, you don't necessarily know that about the federal government, right? Because you only know what you are told, and you are probably not even listening most of the time, and understandably so. I mean, what effect can you have on it? Um, I am mask agnostic. Wearing a mask depends on my circumstances. I'm leaning towards I've never really worn one in public, and I'm not gonna start. And I will make a scene if someone tries to force me. I think at this point, it's good practice to stand up even for something small. My go-to is gonna say I'm protesting Black Lives Matters, so I can't wear a mask. Uh, I don't have a degree. Can I get a job in the oil industry? Not right now. I mean, yes, you can get a degree in the oil industry, but it's a bust right now, buddy. So now it's not a good time. Do you think that the plot of Animal Farm was too nice to Lenin and Trotsky? Yes, because you can't be bad enough to Lenin and Trotsky. See you, Glenn. Have a good day. High stakes testing does breed conformity. The whole system is to breed conformity, and the testing is pretty ridiculous. Uh, I'd be shocked if Trump won now. Well, we were all shocked that he won the first time, so I don't know what to think. We'll see. I could see it going either way. I've only seen Biden in his black mask and giant sunglasses for months now. I'm pretty sure he's dead, and they're using actors to keep the campaign going. Yeah, I think I've told this story before. On the New Hampshire primary back in February, I met one of the guys who worked Pete Buttigieg's campaign, who apparently knew him really well. And thank you, Gay Network. And we went out for coffee, and Biden showed up. So if you watch the video, Biden goes to a Dunkin' Donuts. Uh, he got like fifth place in New Hampshire, so he's leaving in disgrace. And I was at that Dunkin' Donuts a few minutes before that happened, and Biden's bus showed up, and my friend, all the campaign staff know each other, and they know what each other are doing. And he was like, "Oh, Biden's going to come here," and there's this big bus that says Biden on the side. He's not in that. That's the fake bus. The real bus is behind it, and the real bus is unmarked. It was this dark red color, no markings on it. That's the real bus. He goes, it has a giant bed in it, and Biden just sleeps all day. He's like, Biden can only campaign like an hour or two a day, and he has to rest the rest of the day. He goes, unlike Pete, who, whatever you want to say about Pete, like he's young and vigorous and can be shaking hands at 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. every morning. Biden can't do that. So like that was in February. I'm sure it's worse now. Um, how that can be common knowledge among the staff who are talking to reporters all the day, and yet the news media feels that this is just not newsworthy to report on. I don't know. There's a long history of this with presidents, right? They knew that FDR was fucking crippled and they never report on it. They knew he couldn't walk. They knew he couldn't walk, and that never made the headlines. Same thing with JFK and his womanizing. That was open secret, and the public did not know. And like some of the women he took advantage of, and some of the people who knew about it were going around telling, "Hey, I've got this juice. I have proof. Blah blah blah." And I don't want to hear it. Jack's our man, right? So uh, I just gave 3 examples, and they were all Democrats. It probably happens with Republicans too, but I mean, the media obviously likes Democrats more than Republicans. Uh, Finally catching one of these lives. Hey, Poe, nice to see you. Hope all is well. Nice to let you catch it live. I did it a different time today. Um, I was personally really annoyed at lolberts and boomers that acted as if wearing a mask is some huge affront to their liberty. Okay, you're free to be annoyed. I mean, whatever. Uh, Orwell was a socialist. Yeah, but a disillusioned one. His time in Spain, I think, seeing the infighting. I mean, the Spanish Civil War was quite ridiculous because you had, well, they called them the fascists. That's really not true. You had the fascist party of Spain, which is called the Falanga, or the Falange, and then you had Franco. And Franco was a conservative general, right? He wasn't really a political fascist. And the head of the Falange was murdered. He was in prison when the war started. He was executed by the Republic. Which was stupid. They should have let him go, and there would have been infighting in Franco's camp in all likelihood, but there wasn't. He was murdered, so he could become a safe martyr for Franco. But so Franco was more of a conservative general, whatever you want to say about that. But then within the anarchist, you have the anarcho-socialists, you have the communists, then you had the regular socialists, that sort of dynamic. And the Soviet Union got involved, and Stalin's #1 enemy wasn't Franco, it wasn't the Falanga, it was the anarcho-communists and anyone who he associated with Trotsky, right? Anybody who was a Trotskyite. And so the Soviet agents, Soviets were basically waging war on the other leftists. I mean, that was it was unequivocal, and we have the dispatches here on this. And if you read Kotkin's book on Stalin, he goes into a lot of detail on this. Uh, Absolutely bloodthirsty for the other leftists, something that they did repeatedly in Europe. I mean, when Hitler was coming to power, what were the communists doing? They were trying to stop the liberal socialists, right? They were fighting the other socialists. They saw the fascist as their, the enemy of my enemy is my friend type of deal. So it was kind of ironic when then he fucking murdered millions of communists. So I think he was very disillusioned by the whole thing. That's not to say he was a free market libertarian, absolutely not. But he saw how where their ideals hit the road, it ends in a mass grave pretty much every time. How do I convert my Marxist girlfriend to libertarianism? I would recommend getting really good in bed. Also, turns out wearing a mask makes surveillance. I actually, broken microphone. That's a good point, and I've thought about that as well. So that's nice. Uh, Length is the real power behind Biden. They met at the Dunkin' Donuts. Reality confirmed. Yes, he came there to get his orders. Um, you know that FDR threatened. No, I didn't know that. NBC not to broadcast news reports of him that were negative of him. No, but I'm absolutely not surprised. I mean, there's lots of theories about him. They think if you ever look up Huey Long, so Huey Long was a hugely powerful governor of Louisiana, the most powerful governor ever, probably in the history of the United States, and was a potential Democratic rival of Roosevelt. And he was murdered in a very strange murder in the Capitol building. He was shot dead. And there's lots of theories that FDR had him offed, but I don't know if they're true or not. There was history between the guy who did it and Long's family, but if you ever are interested in that story, a really great book on him is called Kingfish. That was his nickname, Kingfish. So anyone who's really interested in Huey Long, that's an incredible American politician. Not one that I necessarily agree with, but I would highly recommend people look up that book, Kingfish, for that. Kind of jealous about the gay network, gay privilege. What are you jealous about exactly? Um, it's it is interesting. I was thinking about this the other day. Like you didn't see the beginning of the feed, but like one of the administrators of the local university here is a guy I know, and I've only met him 2 or 3 times, but he's super submissive in bed and super obedient. And I hypnotized him the last time we met, like a month or two ago, and he told me all kinds of things that he would not tell people, I don't think, normally. And I learned a lot of stuff about the university that I wouldn't have known. And even if I hadn't hypnotized him, he told me a lot of things. So um, there's just, you get people in bed. I mean, you get people in your bed, and then you can take advantage of that or not. I mean, you can go and just say, hey, let's have sex. Or you could be like, oh, so how's work? And what's that policy all about? And I found, look, the stuff he was telling me this time about how they use implicit bias to shame their students into political radicalism, that is disgusting and revolting. But I know I wasn't going to change his mind that day. And so I didn't have a debate. I just acted like, yeah, that's cool. Tell me more. So I learned a lot more, right? I learned a lot from him, and I don't think he has any idea how abysmal I thought that sounded. But it was interesting because then I was in jiu-jitsu class like last week, and there's a guy at his university who's a lower guy, farther down the totem pole, and he was being very like hush hush, and he's like, someone asked him like, hey, are they going to be open or not? And he goes, well, we haven't decided. Like, they're definitely going to be closed. And he's like, how do you know that? I'm like, oh, you know. So like, that's definitely a thing. It's definitely a thing. Uh, duh, duh, duh. Hey, Tortoise, are you married yet? I know you had a wedding coming up. How's that going? What does blackpilling mean? He's an average looking white guy. Thanks, broken microphone. Thanks a lot. That kind of hurts. I don't get 100 messages every day. I get 100 messages if I travel. So like if I drive through another city or something, you'll get 100 messages. When I'm just sitting at home in Manchester, I don't get 100 messages. Black-pilled means extremely pessimistic. Well, I'm sorry, that wasn't intentional. It was all my secret plan to get straight guys to be gay. Ha! Careful, Dread. You know, Dread Pirate Alex and Broken Microphone, you guys both live in the Balkans. One of you is Greek and one of you is in Bulgaria, so you guys should be friends. Basically the same country, right? Oh shit, not married yet. My fiance's stuck in Europe because her interviews are suspended. I'm sorry to hear that. Literally open grinder. I don't remember what day that was, broken microphone. If I have been traveling, that does happen. If I'm not traveling, that doesn't happen. I'm just saying that to not blackpill you. Do take a gray pill. All right, we have our own problems. Greece is the Balkans. Okay, now we're gonna have a debate. Greece is part of the Balkans. Are you ever wanted to write a book? Have you already written one? I'm not sure what you mean. Oh, have I ever wanted to write a book? I've thought about writing a book. I think I may write a book. I was actually thinking about it earlier this week about actually just starting to write it. Um, but I have not written one, and it would probably not be on a libertarian topic per se, because I think that stuff has already been done very, very well. Um, we don't consider ourselves the Balkans. Well, you're Greek, and so I'm sure you think that you're the most special people ever. but it's definitely part of the Balkans. Do you agree, broken microphone, do you agree that Greece is part of the Balkans? Uh, Wild length can control minds to turn people gay and solicit political secrets. Yeah. Oh, by the way, there will be another hypnotism video, guys. One of the reasons I didn't make a video was because the hypnotism thing went very south very fast. And there will be a video on that in the near future. Yes, I knew it. See, Dread Pirate Roberts, Greece is in the Balkans, says right there. So that's 2-to-1 vote. Greece is definitely, look, the Balkans is a peninsula. Greece is the tip of that peninsula. That would be like saying the Peloponnese is not part of Greece. The Peloponnese is definitely part of Greece. Being an average-looking white guy when gay is hardly a slight. But broken microphone. They've done surveys here. When they ask people to rate their own sexual appeal, what they normally say is, well, I think I'm an 8, but I know that sounds conceited, so I think I'm a 7. So the average people say is a 7. So you at least have to say I'm a 7, otherwise I feel like it's below. So now an average-looking white guy, when hetero, it's over. Females will act as if you don't exist. So I've seen the studies on this for Tinder. Apparently that's true. It's something like 50, I think it's 15% of guys get 85% of the traffic on Tinder. So on straight Tinder, that is. So that's crazy. My roommate's straight, and when he was Tindering, which he would like, I hope he doesn't watch this, but none of you know who he is, so it doesn't matter. But he would like every single profile, every single one, and he would get 1 or 2 matches a month. But hear this, incels, he met a girl, they dated, they got married, they're having a kid. So like, it's possible even in that situation. So Greece is not in the Balkans. Okay, Matthew Brick, we're done with the trolling. No more trolling. Everyone knows that Greece is part of the Balkans. It's you too, Tortoise. I can't believe you're turning against me here. Lengthy Unearther is a 10 when he cuts his hair. Poe the person is the only female here, so her vote counts more than everyone else's. Trying to lose weight to be a 7. Good luck, Jim Jesus. All it takes is 1. You're you're not my only female subscriber, Poe, but you're like one of 2 maybe. One of 2. Liking every profile brings down your attractiveness score on the app. It's not an optimal strategy. Well, it worked for him. He found someone and got married. Greece is in my front. Unfortunately, it's true that my fellow Greeks like to brag about Greece and think they're too special, but not everyone is like that. Yeah, I mean, taking pride in the achievement of others is just kind of desperate. You don't want to do that. And Greece is an interesting case because they are so important historically and so unimportant today. No offense to Dread. It's just crazy because so much of Western civilization just goes through Athens and Sparta and Plato and Aristotle, and those are just some of the names. You can go on and on and on, and it's really unparalleled. There's nobody even close, and yet that we're talking about 2,400 years ago. So it's like, what have you done for us lately? The Italians at least had 2 goes at it. They had the Romans, who obviously were very, very Hellenized themselves in a lot of ways, but then they had the Renaissance too. So you guys got to have your second. You guys have to have another Renaissance to like up the cred. You're bald over. It's over. I wasn't gonna say anything. Oh, Pentazoid's a female. Oh, I'm sorry, Pentazoid. Okay, well, I said two. I did say two. I did say two. There's two of you. All right. Um, I'm probably a three, basically a neckbeard. I did find a geeky girl, though unfortunately she's a leftist. Well, get really good in bed and use hypnosis. I don't know. Um, yeah, you look like an 8 or 10. You're only saying that because I told you when you solicit a compliment and then you get it, it doesn't count. I learned this about foreskin restoration years ago. Um, what's a Chad? Length was a 4 in his earliest videos. I was still in my 20s in my earliest videos. This was weird. Somebody commented and they were like, "It's like we watched you grow up from a child." And I was like, I was 29 when I made my first video. Um, what technical subject would you like to study that you have not before? That would have to be like coding because it's the most marketable and I think it would be interesting. A technical subject. If it was, that's not the one I would find the most interesting. I just would find it the most like useful probably. Um, maybe Joe Biden is dead and they have him cooped up in a bunker, meaning that they are using AI to make fake videos of him. It could last an entire 4 years. Why not? Yeah. Unimportant. No offense to you. Don't take it personally, Dredd. I'm sure you're great. Um, but let's see. I mean, you've just been like a colony of the British. I mean, let's face it. I mean, you were conquered by the Turks, right? So the Turks ruled you for 400 years, give or take, right? I mean, most of Greece was conquered before Constantinople. Constantinople fell in 1453, and like mainland Greece had already been part of the Ottoman Empire for 50 years by then or more. And you didn't get your independence until what, 1821? And that was very much a British thing, as far as I know. You can correct me on that if I'm wrong. Um, so yeah, and you've been like, I mean, you're still in the Anatolian shadow, as far as I'm concerned. But females care more about looks than guys do. Height alone is reason enough for females to reject you. Rope, that sounds like you're short when you say something like that. I'm 6'2", so that would not be a problem for me. Jim, don't feed the trolls. If you've been noticed, I've been very discreet in my ignoring them. Uh, you had a chubby face in your earlier videos. Yeah, I lost a lot of weight. In 2015, I lost like 60 pounds. Made a difference. Also, my face burned off at one point. I would have guessed you're 29 now. Yeah, that's what the guys on the nude beach said too. Don't drink. Don't smoke. Don't do drugs. Go to the gym. Eat healthy. Boom. It's not that hard, people. Uh, bu -bu -bu. Greece was the light of the Middle Ages, the main power in Europe. In Eastern Europe, the Byzantine Empire, and no, I don't think that's even true. They've been in decline since like Justinian, pretty much. You got those dates right. Well, I fucking read a book, Dread Pirate Alex. You're 6'3"? How did you make out with a woman? Did you have to sit down? That's crazy. Drinking, drugs, and smoking are overrated. Absolutely. Being tall and buff is good, but you can always compensate for your money. Yeah, there was this. I was watching what is it, Secretariat, the movie, and the little jockey's like, "I'm taller when I sit on my wallet." Got to have the resources. I read really small amounts can help you lose weight. The calories can add up, though. Be careful. Yeah, no one drinks in that kind of moderation. Like, yeah, you could just take like 20 calories or whatever, but nobody does that. What is this Western bias you have about Greece? Well, the West beat Greece. I mean, that was That's another misnomer people have, that the Byzantine Empire was destroyed by the Ottoman. Yes, it's true that it was Mehmet II that conquered Constantinople. People often forget that the Fourth Crusade also conquered Constantinople, and you had 60 years you had a Latin emperor in the first half of the 13th century. But one of the things that you learn if you study a lot of Byzantine history, which 10 years ago I was really into, is that what really happened is, I mean, the Ottomans had been the Seljuks had been around for a long time. The Byzantines had been fighting the Arabs for, at that point, almost 800 years, right? They had that under control. I mean, early on, you had Greek fire and the Arabs conquered Syria. They really didn't get a foothold into Anatolia until much later, or at least Eastern Anatolia, excuse me, Western Anatolia. But what really changed was that the Western states became much more powerful. So the Venetia, Venice, Genoa, these states became much more powerful relative to the Byzantine Empire, and they were the ones who really kind of destabilized everything. I'm a short neck beard, and I found a girl. There you go. She was like 6 foot herself. Well, 6 foot girls are rare. So, how tall did she want you to be? 6'5"? I'm a short neck beard. Of course, it's not all about looks. I mean, you can have great social skills or whatever. Or money. I drink at most 1 ounce of whiskey. What, a day? At most 3 times a week. Then again, I buy $30 to $100 bottles of hooch, so I make them last. How fat is she? Who are we asking about? Uh, did you see that Turkey will make the Hagia Sophia into a mosque? I never realized it wasn't a mosque. I thought that they'd kept it a mosque since forever. Is that true? I mean, to be fair, it's been a mosque for a long time. I saw that they were restoring it. They were going through and redoing them, like the Justinian murals and stuff. I mean, the building's still going to be there. So we're going to have to get Dread Pirate Alex. Your Greeks are going to have to retake Constantinople, right? The Russians said they were going to do it for about 100 years, but let's be real. The Russians are fucking down for the count. They're not coming for the Dardanelles. They're not going to make it. So let's leave it to the Greeks. You guys need to retake Constantinople, and then you can remake the Hagia Sophia into a church. Because nobody wants to see that fucking Islamic wallpaper over that Justinian chapel. Thoughts about modern Turkey? How does it compare to Greece? Are you talking about like modern Greece and modern Turkey, or historical? That's a good question. Turkey is a very interesting country in a lot of ways, and I don't say that as an endorsement, but it does kind of straddle. It's cliche to say this, but it does kind of straddle Europe and Asia, and has this obvious Islamic history, but it also has it's been a European power for hundreds of years. It still is. I mean, little known fact, but like most of the Janissaries after the 14th century were Europeans, right? They took slaves from the Balkans, right, and made them Janissaries. So those most dreaded armies of the Ottomans were white. They were Europeans to a large extent, not exclusively by any means. And then you have this whole thing with the cult of Ataturk, right? And the cult of Ataturk is basically a cult to secularism. Ataturk had a modern wedding. He didn't, he had his wife dressed a certain way. So Ataturk is a nationalist. He's not, my cup of tea. But his influence in Turkey is as much as a historical figure can really have on a society. And it's one that I don't want to say is necessarily good, but it's very different. It's a counter influence to the Muslim influence. Not that he was anti-Muslim, but just it's a counter thing. So, yeah, I mean, and they've been fucking at war with the Russians forever. 500 years or more, right? They really know how to lose a little, but not everything, right? They're really good at surrendering on the periphery, but they've been quite tenacious with the Bosphorus. Even when the French and the English came, they were able to hold them away. So Um, yeah, now they have their own nationalist problems. They've been very bloody-eyed against the Greeks. I'm sure I don't need to tell you about Smyrna and what happened there in 1922, or what happened in Trabzon and some of the northern parts of the Pontic regions. Or maybe I do have to tell you. I don't know. I don't know how much of the history you know, but like, um, yeah, I've heard. So grinder connections. I have friends who have been to Turkey, and they say that the atmosphere there is completely different after Erdogan came to power and kind of re-Muslified it, I guess. They said that the Grinder, every profile now is blank. So there's still guys on Grinder. There's still gay people in Istanbul, obviously, but everyone is in the closet now. Good or bad, the ugly, however you want to read it. Yeah. Um, uh, Money means you can take advantage of you and cheat on you. Maybe. Well, you want to have the good person skills, and you want to endear them to you and earn their love and trust. I mean, good social skills really can trump all this other stuff, your body, your money. If you have good social skills, good people skills, you can do it. But it's hard to but also to be fair, it's hard to have good person skills like when you're ugly and disgusting, because then you just feel horrible about yourself. It's doable, but it's hard. So get in shape, that certainly helps, all that stuff. I think the Hagia Sophia has been a museum since the secular regime or World War II or so. Oh, fascinating. Um, I mean, it makes sense. It was a look. It's got a long history there, and yes, it was really a church. It was a church for 800 years, but then it was a mosque for 400 years, and it's not wrong that it become a mosque again. I'm not. I mean, it's fine. It's whatever. I mean, it's wonderful as a museum. I've never been. I'm told it's still one of the most arresting buildings that you can visit. So if they want to turn it into a mosque, I mean, I guess they can have a debate about it, but it's not the end of the world if they do. We will take it back one day. I'm religious, though I don't care about the church. Yeah. For the Greeks claim that they I've heard the Greek claim that they won World War II for the Allies because they slowed down Hitler by a couple months. The Yugoslavians also claim that. So, am I remembering this right? Was it in 41 that they invaded Greece? I think so. No, I mean, but again, the Yugoslavians could say the same thing. They certainly helped. I mean, they fought back. But you know, most of the effective fighting came from the British. I mean, the British had an expeditionary force in Greece. They had a called the Aliakman Line, just to show off so there's a defensive position around Thessalonica called the Aliakman Line. But they had to retreat, and then there was actually the largest parachute invasion that the Germans ever did was against Crete. They invaded Crete, and they lost so many paratroopers that they never did that again. But they weren't killed by Cretes; they were killed by New Zealanders and Australians. It was the Anzac Corps that was in Crete, and specifically the New Zealanders wiped out a couple units. There were a couple of German units that tried to parachute onto airfields, and the New Zealand guys just killed all of them to a man. So there's even like some quotes from some German generals that said that they were terrified to fight New Zealand people. So that wasn't the Greeks though; it was the New Zealand people. Uh, Turkey wants to get in on the natural gas discovered in the Mediterranean, possibly explains partially their hostility towards Europe and their activity in Libya. I mean, I'm sure everybody wants to get on that. Um, there were pogroms against the Greeks in the 1950s and in the 1920s, and uh, I think probably now again too. If you are still, I mean, it's just one of the few podcasts that I really like is called the what is it called? Like the Lost Civilizations podcast, and they did one on the Byzantine Empire, and you read these accounts by these Turkish, Istanbulis, talking about the Byzantine character parts of the city. There's certain parts of the city that still, they're populated by Greeks. They still have Greek buildings, and how that's just part of their they have this mixed heritage, basically. What's the picture on your shirt? It is. V for Vendetta, guillotining a donkey in the back. I think it says change we can agree in, something like that. I bought it at Pork Fest a couple years ago. What do you define as good social skills? So an ability to read other people, to know what they're thinking and how they're feeling, and to cater what you're saying to reflect that, and then also to shape it. So you can tell when you're telling somebody a story, for instance, or you're talking to somebody, you can tell if they're interested or not. And you have the good graces to end the conversation tactfully, or to redirect it in a way that they like more, to listen to them, to let them talk, right? This is something I struggle with a lot, where I always feel like, not always, but I very often feel like I have something to say, and really that's not always necessary. You know, when I've got the guy from SNU on my bed, I let him talk, and I learn about all the fucked up shit they're doing at school there, which is good. So yeah, I think the most important thing is to have communication with people, and a lot of that's going to be nonverbal, looking at their body language, looking at where their eyes are, looking at what they're thinking. Really, just I call it reading people. Be able to see what they're thinking, how they're feeling, and learn how they tick, learn about them as much as you show about yourself, if not more. And then there's a very fine line in there between manipulation and persuasion that I've thought about a lot, especially now with the hypnotism stuff. You want to respect them, and you want to the extent that you're trying to persuade them, you want to know that it's something that they actually want. Whatever, persuading them to change their mind about something, whatever it is, go to change their political opinion, go to the gym, go out to eat, whatever it is, that it's something that they might actually want. You don't want to manipulate somebody, because A, that's not ethical, but B, they will tend to catch on to that eventually. If they can, you can guilt somebody into doing something, you can intimidate somebody into doing something. And in the right context, that might even be okay. Like if you're in a life or death situation, or somebody that you have a real grievance against, sure, go ahead, knock yourself out. But if it's somebody that you value, that you want to actually have a quality relationship with, you don't want to do that. All right, because they'll figure it out eventually, and it'll come back to bite you. I don't think there's a future for us. I think the left one. All right, well, marry your girl and have some nice libertarian babies. You're looking at it from a gay lens. Male standards are just different. Homosexual attraction is completely different. Much easier game. I'm not going to say it's not different. I'm sure it is different. I'm absolutely sure it's different. No question about that. I think that you're wrong to think that looks don't matter for gays. Looks, if anything, they matter more, because we don't care about the other things, right? If you're not necessarily looking for somebody to form a life with. There are people who do, I mean, for sure, but it's like, what can I get tonight, and do you look good or not? That's a much more prominent thing with men. I think at some level, I think that's not even a gay straight thing. I think that's a male thing. Who's got the best genes? It doesn't make sense for gay guys, but it's true. We have the same impulses. I could be wrong, but that would be my take on that. That's your favorite history podcast? Well, it's the only one that I listen to regularly. Have you watched the documentary Stalin, Man of Steel? Not that I remember. My favorite one on Stalin is called Stalin, Blood in the Snow, which is more about World War II. And then obviously Kotkin's books. And if you don't want to read his books, just go and watch. He's probably got 20 hours of lectures on it online you can find. Joe Rogan, Ben Shapiro, yeah. Letting someone else talk can let them feel important and special. Not only let them feel important and special, but you can learn more, right? When someone else talks, you can learn two things. You can learn whatever they're talking about, and you can learn about them, right? You can learn about how they think, what they value, their thought process, and also whatever topical thing they're discussing, right? So, you know, the guy in my bed, I was learning about the school and the rationale behind it, but also how he thinks, how he works, what goes through his mind. So, yes, you are learning. You can learn quite a bit by listening to somebody talk, and like again, topically about them. So if it's a girl, this is horrible advice, guys. right? Or I can't say, but you want to listen and find out like what does she care about, what does she know about, and or her, whatever. Like people like to feel valuable. And if you're interested in that person, then they are valuable. And that's the thing. It's not a con, right? If you are actually interested in someone, whether it be male or female, then they are valuable, and you should want to listen to them and get them to talk about whatever it is. So, um, yeah, and personal things like how do you feel about that? Why did you decide that? Why did you not like that? Why did you like that? Not what do you think about tax policy? Yeah, don't get into a debate either. Um, you have to be interesting too. I agree with that, Poe. You should have something to say, but you should know when to say it. Uh, Gay culture is more shallow about certain things. Yep, that's probably true. I'm referring about manipulating others, but they will catch up to it eventually. Yeah, they will probably. You don't want a relationship that's built on that. Now, if you're manipulating somebody to make a sale, I think that's still ethically questionable. It's a little bit different. You're not building a relationship on it. I know one of the first guys that I hypnotized was a friend of mine, and he had just gotten a marketing degree, and he was just nuts. And he was like, "Oh my God, I'm going to hypnotize all of my customers to buy my stuff now." And that I felt bad that I taught him anything. I don't like Dan Carlin, please. Everyone says that. I don't like Dan Carlin. I don't like hardcore history. When you say the guy in your bed talking about school, you don't mean high school, do you? Well, I may have heard that conversation as well, but no, I'm talking about a guy who worked at Southern New Hampshire University. He was high up in the administration. That's who I was talking about. It's a George Bush joke. Yeah, I remember. He said, "Fool me once, shame on you. Fool on me, fool me twice. You're not gonna fool me twice," or something. He just fucked it up. Um, you should make a hypnosis tutorial video. Um, I thought about doing that. There are already some out there that are good. Um, I What's wrong with Dan Carlin? I think he's too melodramatic, and I don't think he goes deep enough, and I don't like how he tries to make it juicy, and I just don't like it. And also, I like to read my history typically. I want to see if I'm susceptible. Or broken microphone, they actually have. There's a couple videos on YouTube you can already do that. Zach Pinceps has done one or two called "Hypnotized Through the Screen." So if you look up Zach Pinceps, and I think it's one of his most popular videos where he has you look at the screen. He obviously does I think he does a really good job with it. So if you want to try with that, because he does a better job than I'll do. I mean, he's been doing it a little bit longer than I am, so. Melodramatic. That's a nice Greek word right there. It's a nice word from a dead language. What's the legal responsibility of New York Times have if they knowingly provided info that they knew would aid a crime, hypothetically? Well, I think that intention matters here, and if they were just reporting something, right, this is a fact that happened, uh, and it's newsworthy, and maybe they know that could be used in crime anyway. I don't think so. If they're doing that with the intent, then that matters, and yeah, I think they would be culpable then. Okay, I found the guy. Yeah, So check out those videos. Over the screen is not the same as in person, but that's a good place to check. Uh, I have found that people just do not have any kind of accurate um, suggestibility doesn't seem to correlate with other traits. So almost half the guys that I've hypnotized have said that it won't work on them, and they had no reason to think that. It was completely based on just an assumption. I tend to think that the large majority of people are suggestible to some extent, not necessarily easily suggestible. Like your average person wouldn't be good in a stage show because they wouldn't be suggestible enough. But that's the first time you do it. If you do it subsequently more times, your mind can get trained. And I've had experiences with that myself and doing it to other people as well. We do speak it right here in Cyprus. It's the opposite of dead, actually. Do you think females are more susceptible to hypnosis? I might try to do it. From everything that I know, I've only hypnotized males. I tried one female at PorcFest, and it was, oh crap, it worked a little bit. She wasn't the most suggestible person. One of my subscribers is well, they're a couple. So I haven't done many women, but they're in stage shows all the time. I know a lot of stage shows where they just split it 50-50, men and women. Women definitely are suggestible, so it definitely will work on women, and it definitely will work with men, and you definitely can get people in bed with it. I mean, you can make people get in bed with it. You can get people who would not have sex with you to have sex with you. And then you can either have them not remember it, or you can have them think it was the best sex they ever had. You can do whatever you want. It's crazy. It's crazy. It raises a whole host of ethical questions that are interesting and not sufficiently answered, in my opinion. But I had a friend, right? So this is platonic friendship, although he was gay. And he was not that suggestible. He was not that suggestible. The first time I met him, I was able to hypnotize him, and about 50% of the suggestions worked, and about 50% of them did not work. And you find that there's a progression of suggestibility. So the things that everyone is a little different, but the things that are most suggestible are physical things, right? So you can suggest to somebody, for instance, that you can't open your eyes, and they can't, or your hands are stuck together, or something like that. You're immobilized. But it's very interesting. One of the guys I know, I would say your hands are stuck together, and he'd be like, "Booyah!" And then I'd be like, "You're frozen like a statue," and he'd be like, and why he could freeze like a statue but could still pull his hands apart, I do not know. But that's just how it is. So that's the physical stuff. Okay. But then like the next level below that would be more mental things. You're happy. You're sad. You are really enjoying this. You're really tired. You're whatever. And then a level below that would be like actual hallucinations. So this is in stage shows very often. I look like Santa Claus. You can only see in black and white. I'm invisible. That's one that I find is like the peak. Now you're still there. You're still there. The light photons are bouncing off your body, and their retinas are taking it in. But they're so suggestible that their brain reinterprets what it sees to not be you. And I have done that with multiple people the first time. Like 30 minutes in, 20 minutes in, 10 minutes in. They've never been hypnotized before, and you can go invisible. You can also give them amnesia. Some people just have amnesia anyway. Many times, like the next day, people will message me and say, "What did we do?" They don't remember. I've had people now record themselves so they know what they did, and so that there's no question about did I take advantage of them. But you can also just delete I mean, you can just say you're not going to remember this. And so those are like the tiers. So here's the thing: is like, well, my friend was at the tier of um, physical things. I could restrain him body. I could make it put his arm up. You know, like funny things like that. But I couldn't do anything mental. I couldn't make him forget things. I couldn't make him forget his name or a number. I couldn't make him feel a certain way. But then the second time I met him a week later, he got induced much easier. The first time it took 20, 30 minutes. The second time it took 2 minutes. And it was kind of interesting. I should say this for its own video, but like he one of the tests is to forget your name, right? It tells someone they don't remember their name. And I was like, your name is, and he remembered his name. And so, but he was good at physical stuff. So I said, okay, when I snap my fingers, you'll still remember your name, but your mouth, your lips, your tongue will not be able to actually form the words. You won't actually be able to speak the words. They'll become, your mouth will just seize up and you won't be able to say it. You'll say any other word, any other sound, but when you won't be able to say your name. And I snap my fingers and I go, my name is, and he told me my name. And I go, and your name is, and he was like, and he couldn't say it. And then I go, just like the ability to speak, your mind, you're so suggestible now that, which is itself a suggestion, by the way. It's very clever. It's not very clever. It's just standard hypnosis. But like, it's so suggestible now that you are able to switch off the memory that controls how your mouth works. You're so suggestible now that when I snap my fingers, you will actually turn off the memory of your name, and you will not even be able to remember your name in 3, 2, 1. And he goes, and when he comes back, he doesn't remember his name. And the week after that, I got him to forget numbers, so I made him forget the number 4. So he's like 1, 2, 3, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 5, 6 fingers. Like it's crazy when they do it. But like a week after that, he was I'm a slave, or whatever you say. Like, so he was like an average guy, and in like 3 sessions, he went from like to yeah. So sorry guys, wait, like how do you know the person is suggestible to it? So you don't know a priori. Some of the hypnotists I've talked to who've done it to a lot of people say they start to get a sense. There's certain things I've heard it described as openness, how open is somebody, but they don't know for sure. And so there are like suggestibility tests where, say you get like 100 people and you have them all do this test, and you'll be able to tell which one of them are the most suggestible. And that's when they do a stage show. That's exactly what they do. If I had just 2 random people, the chances that they're both really suggestible are not that high. They might both be, but it might only be one, or maybe they're both average. If I had 100 people and I picked the 10 most suggestible, though, they're probably going to be pretty suggestible, and that's the start of a good stage show. So they'll do little tests. A common one is to have people hold their fingers open like this and just say your fingers are becoming magnets. Your fingers are becoming magnets. You can feel them pulling. You can feel them pulling. And the people who are not suggestible, they won't really notice that so much. The people who are suggestible will be like, whoosh, like that. Yeah, hypnosis means like sleep something. That stuff sounds too crazy to be true. I absolutely agree that it sounds too crazy to be true. Absolutely agree with that. And I would have thought that a few months ago. I would have said, yeah, there's no way. And also, hypnotherapists and stage hypnotists will deny that, because if they started admitting how powerful it is, potentially, that nobody would let them on stage with a bunch of high school kids. In the United States, I don't know about the rest of the world, but like in the United States, at least in New England, hypnosis stage shows are really popular in high school and really popular in colleges, among other venues. And they literally go and they'll test like the whole school. They'll have the whole school come, they'll do a suggestibility test. I'm like, okay, there are the 20 kids who are the most suggestible kids in this school. They put them up on stage, and if they're in the top 10% of suggestibility, oh my God, there's nothing you can't do. It's like, and then they say, oh no, you can't make you do something you don't want to do. It's like, nah, they got to say that, but it's not true. I'm skeptical. What psyop are you doing here? Well, technically, broken microphone, this is called pre-suggestion, so I'm not actually hypnotizing anybody right now, but by talking about it and telling you how real it is and how effective it is, it starts to go into your mind, and you start to think about it being effective, and the more you think about how effective it becomes, it actually becomes self-reinforcingly more effective. Right, so whenever I hypnotize somebody, the first thing I do, I don't sit them down like, okay, look at my finger. I sit them down like, okay, this is what's going to happen. I'm going to start talking. You're going to go into a trance. You're going to relax. It's going to feel great. At some point, you're going to slip into a stage where you become, quote, suggestible, where the words that I say become real. They go into your mind, and they become real. That's essentially what happens is the words become real. So if I tell you you feel happy, or I tell you that you're horny, or I tell you that you want to suck my dick, or I tell you that you're a slave, or that you whatever, think you're a girl or a chicken, or that you can't move your eyebrow, or whatever it is, that becomes real in your mind. And we will get to that point, and it might take 10 minutes, it might take 40 minutes, it might take 2 sessions, but it will happen. And then your brain is thinking that. And then when it starts to relax and starts to listen, it starts to listen to my voice, and you go deeper and deeper, more relaxed and more focused, and just letting your words just get, well, anyway, we'll do the video some other time. It's an exaggeration to say that it works that well on everybody immediately. Your average person, the first time you hypnotize them, you're not going to be able to brainwash them. Okay, but what you will be able to do, maybe make it so they can't open an eye. Maybe, like, a lot of guys, I can't restrain them at all, but, like, you know, I'll say your hand feels like it's very light, and, like, you know, my hand does feel really light. Now, it didn't actually move, but it's like your hand isn't any lighter. You're just thinking it is because you're becoming suggestible, right? So it's like you kick in the door, you just open the door a little bit, and then you can open it more and more and more, and eventually it's going to swing wide open. And when it swings wide open, any suggestion just becomes the reality of your mind. I know, right? But lots of things in life can't be explained, and yet they are real. It's interesting to say that about hypnosis because it's in your mind, so, like, to what extent anything in your mind is real is debatable. But yes, there is a there, if that makes sense. There are physiological things that happen when you're hypnotized. You know, it's just a state that's real. What exactly it means, that's more debatable. If you think about it, then religion is kind of a systematic way of hypnotism. People sit in meditation, praying. That's pretty much hypnotizing themselves. Yeah, I actually agree with that. And even like a religious ceremony at a church or a mosque or a synagogue where everyone is focused their attention in one spot. There's an altered state of reality with the stained glass and the incense, the music and the chanting, the way that you're sitting, and you're just totally focused on the one thing. And yeah, you can go into a trance. Can we train Hans Hermann Hoppe to perform hypnosis? That way we can get a private law society, so to speak. If you assault somebody under hypnosis, have you violated the NAP? No, because afterwards you just tell them that they agreed with it. You are still deeply hypnotized. Nice try, Stephen. Yeah, there'll be a video there. It seems like there just was practically a video just now, but there'll be in its own video. The idea of human mind being susceptible to this degree sounds like a huge evolutionary flaw, like other humans being able to hack you. So I've actually thought about this broken microphone. So the thing is, the first stage of hypnosis is to go into a trance. And trances are very, very common. Not all trance equals hypnosis, but they're very common, and it's not only humans that do them. Other animals can do them as well, where they just become totally fixated on something. And I could see that having an evolutionary advantage because, right, like say you're a polar bear and you're hunting a seal and you're just sitting by its breathing hole, and you might have to sit there for like 2 days or something. So you don't want to be distracted. You just want to sit there and stare at that hole and just be focused right there and not, looking around. So, as one example, for instance, or an animal defending its nest or its eggs or whatever it is. So, being really hyper focused on one thing to the exclusion of the surroundings is something that can be dangerous, but also can be useful in some circumstances. I'm not saying that's what's going on. I'm just saying that sounds plausible to me. That could be an explanation of where trances come from. Where suggestibility comes from, the only thing I can say there is that it's a way to learn. It's a way to have something just ingrained into you automatically, instantly. You're paying complete attention, like, and that can be that obviously has some potential benefits. But I don't know that it's like you say. I don't know. It does seem like a hack. It doesn't seem like something that would evolve for that reason, or maybe it's there for something else, and it's a hack. Like we just learned to do it somehow. It's been people have known how to do it for quite a while. It's not a new thing um, in the West, and I think also outside the West. So, but I don't know. I don't think it's understood. And the thing is, it's seen as so pseudoscientific that it doesn't get a lot of scientific study. It gets some. There's some, but not that much, and so it's not very well understood. And I think that needs to be remembered at all times. I meant if you make someone under hypnosis assault a third person, has the hypnotized person violated the NAP? Joke question, but still. Yeah, so interestingly enough, I was hypnotized is not a defense. So if somebody hypnotized you to, commit a crime, whatever it was, let's say a minor assault or a theft or whatever, and you did it and you got caught, the hypnotist would not bear any responsibility as far as I can tell. And you certainly could not say, I got hypnotized to do it. Um, it just hasn't come up that much, I guess. The law, technically, legally, right now, the law says no. If it was shown, if it could be like demonstrated that it did rob you of agency, let's say that it did work, perfectly, right? You hypnotize somebody and they literally could not act any other way other than how you told them. Then I think hypothetically, then you would be the responsible party as the hypnotist. You took control. They don't have any autonomy anymore. They're just a puppet to your will. Then you would be the responsible party. Now, in practice, with actual hypnotism, there is enough of uncertainty there that I could always say, look, no one can hypnotize you that strongly. So since it's not perfectly effective, and it's certainly not perfectly effective, I'm not saying that, then you got plausible deniability there. So that's an evolutionary exploit, so to speak. And we have those anyway. I mean, sugar, like all the things that we're not used to dealing with having so much of. Can animals be hypnotized, or is it a contingent to understand language? That's a good question. Animals can go into trances. Can they be hypnotized? I don't think so. There's videos of people hypnotizing chickens by drawing lines in the stand. There's videos of people psychologically hacking chickens. Is it hypnosis? Good question. People have committed crimes while sleepwalking. They get off. Imagine bringing the topic of hypnotism to someone. They will probably tell you that that is new age BS. Technically, that's them projecting right there. Yeah, that's the reaction people have. I mean, and I've had lots of guys tell me it doesn't work. It doesn't. It must only work. It's placebo. And I don't think that's even necessarily completely wrong, but they'll still end up getting hypnotized most of the time, right? So, one guy when he left, he's like, "Wow, that shit is real." Penn and Teller has said they tried to debunk hypnosis on bullshit, but they said they couldn't explain it away scientifically. Yeah. Well, it's interesting too because like most stage hypnotists actually start off as magicians, so I would imagine that Penn and Teller probably have some hypnotic training. Um, there's things that are like it's hard to know when you see someone acting. Like if you see a show, or let's say, and I've thought about doing this. Say I bring somebody on that I've hypnotized, which I'm not going to do it unless I can get their consent beforehand. But like I've had many guys who, I mean, they would consent during because I would just tell them and they'd be like, okay. I mean, I try to be as ethical as possible here, and I'm my operating assumption is I will only do I'll talk to them before. What are they comfortable doing? What are they not comfortable doing? And we obviously can't cover every possibility in that discussion, so I operate on the assumption that A, they'll remember everything, which they don't necessarily, but I'll assume that they remember, and I'll assume I want to do stuff that they will still be okay with once they come out of it. Okay, so those are the guidelines that I operate on. But when they're hypnotized and when it works well, which is a lot of the time, I mean, I think anyone can get to that point, but I'm talking like the first time. Um, if I said, hey, I'm going to do a video, I could either tell them just completely ignore the camera or just you're okay with it. And they'll be like, okay, I'm okay with it. But then you as a viewer would watch and always wonder like, okay, is this real? Like, is he faking? Maybe Lengthy Unithar paid him. Maybe it's just role play. Maybe you're just going along with it. And all those are plausible things that actually, I'm sure, do happen in real life all the time. But then you see things like where people will, like a one stage hypnotist will do, is they'll have people like eat an onion, like a big piece of onion. They just start to bite into and eat it, and they don't even cry. Or another one is they'll take like a squirt gun and they'll squirt themselves in the eye without blinking, because they'll be like, it's empty, nothing will come out. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, if you're faking, you know that's not true, right? And you still do it. Like you can't. I mean, I guess you could say you could. I guess you could say you could do it, but that seems like it would be really hard. But those are just some examples. So I think it's feasible that you can get away with crime if hypnotized. Yeah, feasible maybe. If societies accept hypnosis as legit. And to say it's legit is questionable because like it doesn't work all the time. It's not 100%. So you could have somebody like I've met people who were in stage shows and they said, you know, partway through the stage show they kind of came out of it, but they didn't want to ruin the show, so they kept going along. But they don't even try to understand what you mean by hypnotism. Yeah, so there's a lot of people who've never tried it, maybe never even seen it, who just know that it's fake. It's funny that they would consider it New Age because it's been around for quite a while. Not that there is a New Agey element to it. I remember one of the podcasts I listened to was like, oh, get your pendulum, and it's a tri-pendulum, you know, and one of the pendulums is a crystal, and like crystals are great. But like I've hypnotized people with crystals. I was on a beach and I gave a guy a piece of quartz and I was like, that's your hypnosis stone. Just look into it. And he was like, so like, I don't know, it could work. Sleepwalking seems to be accepted as a real thing. And I think you could correct us if I'm wrong, Red Pirate Alex, but I think isn't that what hypnosis literally means, like sleep something? If you ever go on trial for hypnotizing someone to commit a crime, just hypnotize the judge to acquit you. I mean, I've read fiction based on that. Um, I mean, I've tried stuff with guys where I had a guy who lived. I met him at Porkfest, so that's like 2 hours away from here, and I said, you know, just quit your job and leave your family and come live with me. And he's like, oh, okay. What's your address? Like, so it's definitely interesting. There's enough. it's uncertain enough though that you would have plausible deniability, right? If you said I was hypnotized, I couldn't control myself, yeah, that's not going to hold up in court, even though it could actually be true. In a society aware of hypnosis, judges would be selected to not be vulnerable to hypnosis. And here's another interesting thing. If you guys go back and watch my hypnosis video, and I'm sure most of the guys commenting have seen it already, but if you go back and watch it, there's a couple points in that video where I trance out. Okay, so I got programmed. The first time I got hypnotized, he legit put in programming. It's just another word to say a post-hypnotic suggestion, which is to say a suggestion that even after you're done being hypnotized, the suggestion still manifests in your conscious or subconscious mind. And one of the things that did is that whenever I would talk about the programming, anytime I would mention the programming or start to circle that topic in any way, I would start to go into a trance. And if you watch that video, you can see that happen a number of times. And the thing is, if you're my regular subscribers, you maybe thought that was a little strange, or you noticed it, but you didn't really know what to think. And I did get several people message me about that and say, are you okay? I've known you a long time. I've never seen you act that way before. That's new. That's unusual for you. I also had several people message me who were hypnotists who said, you got programmed. They watched the video and said, you are going into a trance every time you talk about getting programmed, every time you discuss it, every time you go into that topic, you're going into a trance, you're trancing out. That is so hypnotists, people who have or who do hypnotism, recognize it, whereas regular people don't recognize it and don't know what's going on. Hypnotists knew exactly what was going on. And I talked to some of those guys and did some more, and I'll do a whole video on this, but like, I got deeply, deeply programmed by the first guy who hypnotized me. I went very deep the first time, and he implanted several, not a bunch, but several hypnotic suggestions, and they really, really changed my behavior for 3 or 4 months. Like, really, really changed my behavior for 3 or 4 months. I was very much a different person in certain respects anyway, not in every respect. He didn't try and change me in every respect. He tried to change me in a couple of specific ways, and he did very successfully. And if you're curious, go back and watch that video, and you can see that. You can see that I actually go into a trance when I talk about it. That was not intentional. I'm not trying to do that. That's just what would happen when I talked about getting brainwashed. As you can notice, I can talk about it now because it's been a couple months and I've had some reverse programming done. But it's that it can be that powerful. It's not always that way. Won't work that way for everybody. Not with every suggestion. Not all the time. But it's very, very powerful. There's people who quit smoking from one hypnotic suggestion, right? So there's a there. Could a defense attorney hypnotize a jury? Yeah, probably. It wouldn't be easy. You probably just have a bunch of subs who are playing a joke on you by pretending all to be hypnotized. So that's a thing that does happen, and I've got one guy in particular who I'm pretty sure that's what he's doing, or at least part of the time. So yeah. Can you hypnotize me to quit alcohol? That would be nice. Potentially, yeah. Potentially, yeah. Hit length. Your reverse programming has now been reversed. No, it doesn't work that way. Nice try, though. Oh. All right, guys. Anything else? It's getting late for me. I think I might want to go to the gym and work out. Hypnotize some people. Who knows? Yeah. So there'll be an explicit hypnotism video here in a little while. Even though I talked a lot about it just tonight, but just now. But could you kill my sugar? Maybe. Oh, Glenn, I'm about done. You're just catching the tail end here. I want to pay a hypnotist to hypnotize me. That's what hypnotherapy is all about. Or you could take LSD. I mean, I had a problem where I hypnotized one guy over Skype, and it was just practice for me. And then like 2 to 3 days later, he's like, "Can you make me go to the gym more?" I was like, "Oh, sure." So we did that. And then a couple days later, he's like, "Can you get rid of my anxiety?" And I was like, "Listen, buddy, this ain't a business. I don't have the time, and I'm not qualified. So you're gonna have to find somebody else." But yeah. All right, guys. Well, thank everybody for watching, and I'll be back sometime pretty soon. Peace.